Chapter 628. Ji Tinghai walked out slowly. Although he had tried his best to restrain his aura, he was still unable to hide his sharpness. His gaze trembled slightly as he looked at Ji Wuxiu, bowed slightly, and said respectfully, "Grandfather." Ji Wuxiu was a 6th-tier spiritual formation grandmaster, and his spiritual power exceeded the 70th tier. He could tell at a glance that Ji Tinghai was already at the 5th tier of the divine wheel, and the 6th-tier spiritual formation he had placed on Ji Tinghai's body 3 years ago had already completely fused with his origin spirit. The 6th direction spiritual formation was a 6th-tier spiritual formation, and it could almost withstand the attacks of a 9th-tier divine wheel martial artist. The fusion of this formation in Ji Tinghai's body put him in an invincible position. "Very good. Tinghai, you really didn't disappoint, grandfather." Ji Wuxiu laughed heartily. His excitement was evident in his words. Fortunately, he had a grandson like Ji Tinghai. Otherwise, the future Ji family would definitely be destroyed in the hands of Ji Tingyu. Yao Fei also sensed Ji Tinghai's strength. His expression was shocked, and he couldn't help but gulp. Ji Tinghai was only 22 years old, and he was already a 5th-tier divine will martial artist. This talent shocked the world. Even Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojingbak then were only this good. People were right. If Ji Tingyu was given another 10 years, the Ji family would definitely be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 4 great aristocratic families. Ji Tinghai nodded slightly. His eyes were calm and determined. He said indifferently, "The champion of the Meru martial meet will definitely be me." His words were calm, but they were filled with extreme arrogance and confidence. Ji Tinghai was determined to be the champion of the Meru martial meet. Just as Ji Tinghai walked out of the room, several figures in black appeared in the martial market of the Meru spiritual capital. Among these figures, there were 3 who were very familiar. They were the people of the Heaven Burial Association, Shengwan Yin, Wei Yangzi, and Dragon Fifth. And in the middle of the 3 stood a young man. This man wore a black cloak, and his appearance was extremely ugly. He had a protruding forehead, and 2 fangs were revealed in his mouth. He was a head shorter than ordinary men, and his entire body shrunk under the cloak. However, his eyes flickered with a sharp, cold light. He was like a wolf waiting for an opportunity. As long as he seized the opportunity, he could tear any enemy to shreds. This face was 30% human and 70% wolf. "Second brother, you haven't come out for more than 10 years. Dragon Fifth glanced at the man beside him. There was a hint of fear in his eyes, and he spoke carefully. After all, this man was his own second brother. The ugly man's name was Long Air. Just like his name, not only was he ugly, but his personality was also very Chuyuni. He was completely one-track minded. In the spirit capital black market, there were 2 people from the Long family who were taboo. The people in the black market did not dare to mention them, and they were called one stupid and one crazy. First Madness referred to the madman of the Long family, Long San, who was killed by Nye Tian. One of them was the person in front of him, Long Tu. Compared to Long San, Long Air's name was rarely mentioned. He was obsessed with martial arts and rarely left the Long family's door. So the black market's people only knew that Long San's strength was terrifying and that he couldn't be provoked. But they didn't know that Long Tu's strength was even greater than Long San's. Furthermore, Long Air did not train in an ordinary martial art or martial skill. Instead, it was a kind of taboo martial art, the 3 enduring arts. It was because he trained in the 3 enduring arts that Long Air's appearance became so ugly. Even his height had shrunk. In the Long family, Long Air and Long San had the best relationship. When he heard that Long San had been killed, he decided to come out and take revenge for Long San, no matter what price he had to pay. At this moment, when Long Air heard Dragon Fifth's words, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "I came out this time only for one thing. Revenge." When Shangwan Yin and the others felt the strong killing intent from Long Air, a cold smile flashed across their faces. The figures of these people walked out of the martial market and entered Sumi's spirit capital. After their figures disappeared, a ghost-like figure appeared. This person was completely hidden in a black robe, and his entire person was like a bottomless abyss. If Nyetian was here, he would be able to recognize this person at a glance. This person was the Qilin Lord of the Long family. The Qilin Lord secretly followed behind Long Air and the others. He said in his heart, "Long Air, my good disciple, don't disappoint your master." Long Air was the Qilin Lord's disciple. Even the Long family, very few people knew about this. The Qilin Lord's lips curled up in a strange smile. Then, his figure flashed and vanished into the void. In the Gu residence, Nyetian arrived at Mo Rushi's residence. Before Xiao Chun entered the courtyard, Mo Rushi's figure already appeared as though she had been waiting for him. Mo Rushi ran out happily and hugged Nyetian's arm naturally. Her lips curled up in a charming smile as she said smugly, "Nyetian, guess what my strength is now? You're not allowed to sense it." Nyetian appeared speechless. After thinking for a while, he said, "Seventh layer veritable essence stage?" Mo Rushi was previously at the first layer veritable essence stage. After consuming the fiend god pill, she should be able to advance to the 5th or 6th layer. Nyetian made an optimistic guess. Mo Rushi raised her head and revealed her snow-white neck like a proud little princess. She shook her head slowly and said, "You can sense it now." Nyetian smiled faintly and used his spiritual sense to sense it. His expression froze for a full 5 seconds before he opened his mouth and said in a trembling voice, "Divine, first layer of divine wheel." He used his spiritual sense to sense it again and confirm that it was not wrong. Mo Rushi's current strength had actually reached the first layer of divine wheel. The medicinal power of the fiend god pill was very strong, but it was impossible for it to directly advance Missouri Rushi by a major realm. This was too incredible. You didn't expect this, did you? Mo Rushi smiled proudly. Her delicate face was filled with happiness and pride. She felt an indescribable sense of happiness in her heart to be able to surprise Nyetian so much. Seeing Mo Rushi so happy, Nyetian couldn't help but smile. Then he calmed down and used his spiritual sense to sense the latter carefully. He was stunned again and said, "Rushi, the phoenix soul in your body has become stronger." Yes. Mo Rushi retracted her smile, and her delicate body trembled. Boundless yuan qi gushed out from her body, and the yuan qi contained an intense and blazing aura. It turned into a scarlet halo, which then condensed into the phantom of a phoenix behind her. Looking at the phoenix shadow behind Mo Rushi, Nyetian's eyes trembled violently, and he cried out involuntarily, "Phoenix soul!" He immediately understood why Mo Rushi's strength had improved so much. The fiend god pill must have stimulated the phoenix soul in her body and triggered the awakening of the phoenix power contained in the phoenix soul, which greatly improved her strength. Very good. Nyetian felt the aura released by the phoenix soul and nodded slightly. He could feel that the power released by the phoenix soul was no weaker than the power of the blade dragon arm. Although Mo Rushi was only at the first layer of the divine will realm, her real combat strength was enough to fight against a martial artist at the 3rd layer of the divine will realm. Yes, Mo Rushi put away the phoenix soul, smiled proudly, and said, "Nyetian, I finally don't have to be a burden to you anymore." Nyetian was slightly speechless. So this was why this girl was so happy. Chapter 629. On the 2nd day, when the sun rose and the first ray of sunlight shone on the land of Sumi spirit capital, the entire city was already in an uproar. The Sumi Grand Meeting was held once every 10 years. It was not only a grand occasion for Sumi spirit capital, but also for the entire 3,000 small worlds. There were 4 main competitions that attracted the most attention. They were the Sumi Martial Meet, the Alchemist Competition, the Weapon Refiner Competition, and the Spirit Array Master Competition. Among the 4 competitions, the one that attracted the most attention was the Sumi Martial Meet. After all, Alchemist, Weapon Refiner, and Spirit Array Master were rare existences. Other than those who were Alchemist, Weapon Refiner, and Spirit Array Master, or those who were interested in Alchemy Dao, Tools Dao, or Spirit Array Dao, most people would not watch such competitions. The Alchemist competition, Weapon Refiner competition, and Spirit Array Master competition were all held in their respective guilds. After all, there were not many people who signed up, and the guilds could accommodate them. And the main venue of the Sumi Martial Meet was the largest martial arena in Sumi Spirit Capital, the Sumi Martial Arena. The Sumi Martial Meet was aimed at all the young martial artists in the 3,000 small worlds below the age of 50. From this, one could imagine how many people signed up. In order to prevent too many people from signing up, the four great families had set a rule that only true energy realm martial artists had the qualifications to sign up. Just this condition alone made the majority of martial artists feel powerless. There were not many martial artists who could reach the true energy realm before the age of 50, and they were basically all people who had been on the Martial Competition Merchant Union's genius list. At this time, a large number of martial artists had gathered outside the martial arena, watching the Sumi Martial Meet's reward notice. Nyetian and the others also arrived outside the martial arena. Seeing the rewards of the martial meet, Nyetian shook his head slightly, not caring at all. The rewards of the martial meet were nothing more than some yuan crystals, spirit pills, spirit weapons, and martial arts. But these things, Nyetian had the best in his hands, and they were not attractive to him at all. Just as Nyetian was about to enter the martial arena, he suddenly noticed that other than a level 7 spirit pill and a level 7 spirit weapon, the martial meet's champion was also rewarded with an additional Yuan Qi geographical vein map. Upon seeing these words, Nyetian's eyes shone with a hint of excitement. A map of the Earth vein. He took a quick look at the explanation behind the map. This was a remnant of an ancient map that seemed to record the distribution of a certain vein of vitality. This information immediately made Nyetian excited. The so-called Yuan Qi Earth vein was some special earth vein topography. It was like a naturally formed heaven and earth spirit formation that could gather heaven and earth spirit qi. Normally, in such a place, there would be many rare yuan stone veins that could be refined into large amounts of yuan crystals. However, this did not appeal to Nyetian at all. What he was thinking was that if he could find this earth vein of yuan qi, he could use the terrain of the vein to open a spiritual absorption array and absorb all the spiritual energy from the vein into the spiritual array. An earth vein of Yuan Qi had existed for tens of thousands of years, and the spiritual energy within it was unimaginable. If Nyetian's idea could succeed, he could help all the people around him increase their strength at an extremely fast speed. Thinking of this, the corners of Nyetian's mouth involuntarily curled upwards as he started to construct the embryonic form of the spiritual absorption array in his heart. Old brother Nya, you're interested in the Yuan Qi geographical vein map? Behind Nyetan, Gu chuckled as he asked in a low voice. Although Gu was a member of the Alchemist Association, compared to the Alchemist competition, he was more looking forward to seeing Nyetian's performance, so he followed along. And Nyetian did not conceal it all, his eyes burning with passion as he nodded his head. Gu, however, frowned slightly as he said, "This Yuan Qi geographical vein map has quite a background. A few decades ago, it had even caused a huge uproar and almost caused the four great families to fight amongst themselves." There was such a thing? Nyetian's gaze congealed, appearing to be very interested as he said, "I'll have to trouble old Gu to explain it to me." Gu smiled bitterly as he said, "A few decades ago, when a Yuan Qi geographical vein map appeared for the first time, the four great families all wanted it. At that time, it was already extremely chaotic, and the Mo family and Gu family almost had a falling out. Afterwards, Master Tang Hao appeared and suggested that the four great families share the Yuan Qi geographical vein map. The Yuan Qi geographical vein map fell into the hands of the four great families, so the other powers naturally did not dare to covet it. It's just that after the four great families researched the geographical vein map, they were not able to find the Yuan Qi geographical vein map. After a few decades, the legendary Yuan Qi geographical vein map still did not appear. I reckon that the four great families no longer have any interest in the Yuan Qi geographical vein map, and on a whim, they gave a Yuan Qi geographical vein map as an additional reward to the martial gatherings champion. Hearing Gu Yi's words, Niet Tian smiled slightly and said, I say, the Yuan Qi geographical vein map is such an important thing, yet the four great families are willing to take it out. So, it's because they're unable to play with it. Gu Yi also laughed and said, the disciples of the four great families will also participate in the Meru martial gathering. Who knows, the Yuan Qi geographical vein map might still end up in the hands of the four great families. Will it? Niet Tian glanced at Gu Yi and gave a strange smile. Gu Yi immediately understood, laughed, and said, if Brother Niet participates in the martial gathering, this Yuan Qi geographical vein map will most likely be taken away by you. Not most likely, it's definitely. Niet Tian nodded with a smile, and his indifferent tone revealed an overbearing confidence. Since he wanted to participate in the Meru martial gathering, he was aiming for the title of champion. He was confident that as long as he did not meet a warrior at the peak of the spirit wheel level, with his trump cards, he could easily take down the title of champion. A warrior at the peak of the spirit wheel level below the age of 50 should not appear. Niet Tian turned around to look at the people behind him, smiled faintly, and said, let's enter. This time, other than Niet Tian, Qiu Shan, Mo Rushi, Duanmulu, Gu Wuyo, Zhang Xiaoi, and the others would all participate in the martial gathering. They had all obtained the demon god elixir, and their strength had greatly increased, especially Qiu Shan and Mo Rushi, who were already at the first tier of the spirit wheel level. Rui Qinyu did not go with Niet Tian. She preferred to be alone. I wonder how strong Tang 13 is now. Niet Tian suddenly thought of Tang 13 and said in his heart, Tang 13 had not appeared in this period of time, and it was obvious that he was cultivating in seclusion. If Niet Tian was not wrong, Tang Hao would definitely personally guide Tang 13. Therefore, Tang 13's current strength would definitely not be too weak, and his ghost eye might be able to open up to the triple-edged ghost eye. Big brother, he is Niet Tian. Just as Niet Tian and the others were preparing to enter the martial field, a familiar voice rang out, sharp and ear-piercing. Niet Tian suddenly turned around and saw a few people appearing not far away. Among them, he was very familiar with two of their faces, Yao Feek and Ji Tingyu. And beside these two people, respectively, was a handsome youth and a dignified old man. Niet Tian, this person is the number one evildoer of Su Mi Ling City, Ji Tinghai. Gu Yi saw these faces clearly, and his expression slightly stiffened. Immediately after, he transmitted a message to Niet Tian, saying, the person behind Ji Tinghai is the president of the Spirit Formation Guild, Ji Wuxiu. This old fellow is famous for being sinister and cunning. You have to be careful. Chapter 630. Niet Tian locked his gaze on Ji Tinghai, sizing him up. Of course, he could sense the unfriendliness in the other party's eyes, but he smiled faintly and replied, I am Niet Tian. His voice was indifferent, without anger, or fear. He just treated Ji Tinghai as the most ordinary person. Niet Tian had already sensed that Ji Tinghai was at the 5th tier of the divine wheel. In the eyes of others, this strength was absolutely shocking, but in Niet Tian's eyes, it was just ordinary. Since Ji Tinghai was known as the number one genius of Su Mi Lingdu, of course, he had to be stronger than MOU. He had already reached the 1st tier of the divine wheel in 3 years. It would be strange if his strength did not improve greatly after 3 years of seclusion. Ji Tinghai's eyes narrowed slightly. He was a little surprised by Niet Tian's calm reaction. Then he smiled faintly and said, with your age, your strength has reached the 2nd tier of the divine wheel, and you can even become a red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Guild. You are enough to be my opponent. His words were indifferent, but full of arrogance. As the number one genius of Su Mi Lingdu, Ji Tinghai had the right to be arrogant. I'm qualified to be your opponent, but whether you are qualified to be my opponent is hard to say. Niet Tian smiled faintly, not giving Ji Tinghai any face at all. In fact, what he said was the truth. With his current strength, if it was a battle of life and death, Ji Tinghai would not stand a chance. His strength had advanced to the divine wheel realm. Apart from the increase in combat power, more importantly, Nietian had awakened more star power in his body, and the Star Soul tablet could inscribe a 5th-rank Star Soul. Nietian had not used a 5th-rank Star Soul until now, but based on his initial estimation, a 5th-rank Star Soul was enough to kill an ordinary 4th-tier Divine Wheel Warrior in a second. In addition, Nietian still had countless terrifying trump cards on him, so he had no reason to be afraid of Ji Tinghai. Hearing Nietian's words, Ji Tinghai's gaze trembled slightly. He felt a ball of suppressed anger in his chest that he could not swallow or spit out, which made him very uncomfortable. His usually calm eyes became angry. He was the #1 genius in Sumiling City. 3 years ago, he had already been able to instantly kill a martial art practitioner at the 2nd tier of the Divine Wheel. Now, he was told that he was not qualified to be an opponent by an opponent of the same age. This was unacceptable to him. Nietan, the red-robed elder of the Apothecary Guild, sure, is arrogant. At this moment, Ji Wuxiu took a step forward and swept his cold gaze across Nietian. He said nonchalantly, "Don't you think it's ridiculous for you to look down on a warrior at the 5th tier of the Divine Wheel with the strength of a 2nd-tier Divine Wheel?" After all, Ji Wuxiu was shrewd and ruthless. He couldn't allow his genius grandson to suffer any grievances. In order to watch Ji Tinghai's match, he didn't even go to the Spirit Array Master competition. How could he let Nietian affect Ji Tinghai's state of mind? Laughable. Nietian lightly smiled, then turned his gaze to Yao Feek and said, "Grandmaster Yao, when I made the bet with you, did you think it was very ridiculous? But in the end, you lost a 5 elements spirit formation to me." When Yao Feek heard Nietian bring up the past again, his face was burning, and he didn't know what to say. Nietian raised his eyebrows, laughed, and said, "We don't have to be anxious. Who is the laughable one? We will know very soon at the Meru Martial Meet." With that, Nietian no longer paid attention to the reactions of Ji Wuxiu, Ji Tinghai, and the others. He directly walked away. Ji Tinghai looked at Nietian's back and gnashed his teeth in hatred. Even his handsome face had a hint of malevolence. After so many years, this was the first time someone had made him so angry. When Ji Wuxiu saw Ji Tinghai's reaction, he couldn't help but frown and say coldly, "Tinghai, don't take his words to heart. It's just the mockery of a weakling. Don't take it to heart." When warriors fought, other than strength, their state of mind was also very important. This was especially so for warriors of the same strength. During a battle, their state of mind often played a decisive role. Ji Wuxiu didn't want Ji Tinghai's state of mind to be affected. The latter had to participate in the Meru Martial Meet with an attitude of looking down on the world. This was the demeanor that the #1 monster should have. Grandson understands. Ji Tinghai retracted his gaze. His expression was much calmer as he lightly nodded. When Nietian and the others entered the martial field, they each received their own challenge cards. Number 14, it's this number again. Is it a lucky number? After receiving the challenge card, Nietian lowered his head and glanced at it. Number 14. He remembered that during the Dragon Blood Martial Meet, his number was also 14. It was very coincidental. After entering the martial field, Nietian swept his gaze around. He saw that in the circular martial field, there were hundreds of martial stages standing quietly, waiting for warriors to come on stage. Outside the circular martial field, there were 12 levels of spectator stands. Each level had a wide field of view, and one could see all the martial stages. Each level of the spectator stands could accommodate about 50,000 people. The 12 levels of the spectator stands were enough to accommodate 600,000 people watching at the same time. Nietian asked in private. The first day's admission fee was 10 top-grade crystals. In the following days, the admission fee would double every day. It had to be said that this price was really King expensive. Back then, when Nietian organized the Dragon Blood Martial Meet, he only received 1 high-grade crystal and was even nagged by Jean de Bayo for being black-hearted. Now, compared to the Meru Martial Meet, Nietion was simply losing money in organizing the Dragon Blood martial meet. The Meru martial meet would last for 5 to 10 days. In this way, the four great families would collect hundreds of millions of top-grade crystals just from the admission fee of the spectators. This was an ocean more than those meager rewards. The four great families were the ones who were truly black-hearted. But even so, the 12th level of the spectator stands were still filled to the brim. The Meru martial meet was held once every 10 years. People from the 3,000 small worlds would come, who would care about a few dozen top-grade crystals. To be able to witness the battle between geniuses from all walks of life was the most important thing. At this time, Nietion's gaze turned toward a special place on the 12th level of the spectator stands. There was a building that looked like a small pavilion floating in the air. It was obvious that it had used some kind of special spirit array to ensure that the small pavilion would not fall. This small pavilion was the high-class VIP room of the martial grounds. Only the group of people with the highest status in the Meru spirit capital could enter the pavilion to watch the competition. At this moment, there were four old men in the small pavilion, whispering to each other. No one knew what they were talking about. Of the four old men, Nietion only recognized one, and that was the great elder of the Mo clan, Mo Xing. He did not recognize any of the other few people. When Gu Yi saw Nietion's gaze on the small pavilion, he smiled faintly and said, "That small pavilion is called the Near Heaven Pavilion. The few old fellows inside are all the intersect elders of the four great families." Nietion frowned slightly and asked, "The patriarchs of the four great families are not coming." "Of course they are coming." Gu Yi laughed heartily and said, "But they are not coming now. The four patriarchs usually appear in the last 2 days of the martial meet, which is also when the top 16 are decided. Although the four great families are in an alliance in name, the internal strife is very fierce. If any patriarch were to appear at this time, wouldn't that be lowering their own status?" "That's true." Nietion shook his head and smiled. These four great families were really a little interesting. Chapter 631. It seems that the competition between the four aristocratic families is very intense. Hearing Gu Yi's words, Nietion was speechless. Gu Yi nodded his head and said no more. At this moment, the crowd seemed to be anxious from waiting and turned their gazes to the heavenly pavilion. The four old men in the pavilion argued for a long time, their faces flushed red. In the end, it seemed that the problem was settled by drawing lots. A moment later, a red-haired old man stepped out from the heavenly pavilion and stood in the air. His gaze swept across the crowd below, and the corners of his mouth curled up proudly, as if he enjoyed this feeling very much. Nietion looked at the red-haired old man in the air and frowned slightly. He is the intersect elder of the Tang family, Mo Xiaotian. When he was young, he was the champion of the Meru martial meet. Gu Yi nodded slightly and said softly, "The previous champions of the Meru martial meet, as long as they were not too weak, were basically recruited by the four aristocratic families and became clan elders of the four aristocratic families. Mo Xiaotian was not a member of the Tang family. To be able to become an intersect elder of the Tang family was enough to show how strong he was." Nietion spread out his divine sense and found that Mo Xiaotian was indeed at the 7th tier of the divine wheel. This person should be around 100 years old. To be able to reach the 7th tier of the divine was already very good. If there were no accidents, he would definitely become an expert at the peak of the divine wheel in the future. Next, Mo Xiaotian first exchanged pleasantries and then introduced the rules of the Meru martial meet. After that, he turned to look at the other 3 people in the heavenly pavilion. The 3 of them walked out one after another. The 4 of them stood side by side and said in unison, "Next, we announce that the Meru martial meet has officially begun." Seeing this scene, Nietion was slightly speechless. The 4 aristocratic families were really outrageous. In the end, the 4 of them announced the start of the meet together. As the 4 of them finished speaking, there was a tsunami of applause in the arena, which only subsided after a long time. The Meru martial meet was divided into 2 stages. the points elimination stage and the heroes competition stage. The first stage was the points elimination stage. The top 160 would be decided in the end, and the heroes competition would be decided in one match. The so-called points elimination stage was actually very simple. Every day, each warrior would participate in 8 matches. A win would earn 1 point, a loss or a draw would earn 1 point. After a day, warriors with negative points would be directly eliminated. This cycle continued until the top 160 were decided. The martial competition had officially begun. On the martial grounds, hundreds of figures appeared in the air at the same time and landed on the stage. Old Gu will head over first, Nie Tian said to Gu Yi before entering the lowest level of the arena. Many warriors lined up outside the martial field, and the hundreds of entrances to the martial field were filled with people. There were more than 3,000 people participating in the Shumi martial meet this time. It wasn't too many, but it wasn't too few either. Nie Tian, Qiu Shan, and the others split up and lined up at different passages to avoid bumping into each other. Soon, Nie Tian handed his duel card to the martial artist standing at the entrance of the passageway. Every passageway corresponded to a martial arena. Arena 7, first match, number 71 versus number 14. Not long after, a voice sounded out. Nie Tian's entire body trembled as he muttered to himself. This scene is somewhat similar. I'm actually the first to appear again. With a step forward, Nie Tian stepped into the passageway and quickly entered the martial grounds. Just as he was walking towards the 7th stage, a figure landed heavily on the stage not far away, causing the entire 50 to 60-meter radius of the stage to shake. Number 14, come out and die. That person's gaze swept across the crowd. His voice was like thunder, and his aura was astonishing. Holy sh*t. It's Xiao Hailei, an expert on the genius list of Su Mi Spirit Capital, who is number 14. He's so unlucky to actually meet this guy. That's right. I heard that Xiao Hailei was once the 10th genius of Su Mi Spirit Capital, and his strength had reached the 6th level of true element a long time ago. However, he's already over 30 years old, and it's been 5 or 6 years since he left the genius list. This guy's attacks are very vicious. I think number 14 should just directly admit defeat. To meet Xiao Hailei in the first round, this number 14 is really tragic. Along with the appearance of this figure, many people's gazes gathered over as they discussed. They were all certain that number 14 was dead for sure. On the other side, a familiar figure stood there. It was the 7th commander of the Danwu Hall, Zhao Qua. He laughed mischievously and said, I didn't expect Hailei to be the first to go up. I wonder who this number 14 is. Hailei didn't hold back when he attacked, and it wouldn't be good if he injured someone. Gu Yi was standing beside Zhao Qua at this moment, but his expression stiffened for a moment. Immediately after, he recalled and cried out strangely, Brother Zhao, it's over. Zhao Qua was slightly stunned. Looking at Gu Yi's exaggerated expression, he asked in astonishment, Big Brother Gu, what happened? Gu Yi slapped his forehead and said, I remember who number 14 is. Your son is going to lose the first round. When Zhao Qua heard Gu Yi's words, he instantly became a little unhappy and said, Big Brother Gu, my son is at the 9th level of true element. Could it be that this number 14 is also a spirit wheel realm warrior? Hailei can't be so unlucky, right? Gu Yi shook his head helplessly. He pointed at the figure on the arena and said, Your son is really unlucky. Look, who is number 14? Zhao Qua looked over, and when he saw the young face clearly, his expression immediately froze. Nie Tian walked over slowly and didn't mind the discussion outside the arena. Hey, kid, can't you walk faster? If you are afraid, just admit defeat. Don't waste my time. Xiao Hailei saw Nie Tian walking over slowly, and he was instantly enraged as he roared. Nie Tian curled his lips slightly and took a step forward. His figure steadily landed on the arena. He looked at Xiao Hailei calmly and asked with a faint smile, Who is the 7th commander of the Danwu Hall? Zhao Qua to you? Nie Tian realized that this guy in front of him not only had the same appearance as Zhao Qua, but even his voice was the same hoarse voice. Zhao Hailei was slightly stunned and replied, "He's my dad." "Oh." Nie Tian nodded with a slightly helpless expression. "Kid, why are you asking this?" Of course, Zhao Hailei had heard of Nie Tian's name, but he hadn't seen the latter with his own eyes. Furthermore, the arena was reading out the dueling token. How would he know that the young man in front of him was the red-clothed elder Nie Tian, whom even his dad had to treat with respect? "Nothing. Make your move." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said calmly. Originally, he thought that the first battle must be shocking. Even if he couldn't kill his opponent, he must at least severely injure his opponent. But since his first opponent was Zhao Kuo's son, then it was a different matter. Arrogant, feeling Nie Tian's insolence, Zhao Hailei roared and released a terrifying aura from his body. Herculean Vajra fist. Zhao Hailei roared angrily. Essence force burst out from his body as he punched out. Instantly, a terrifying fist shadow appeared in the air and pressed down on Nie Tian like a small hill. Many people noticed this scene. They held their breaths and stared with their eyes wide open. The power of Zhao Hailei's punch was very strong. If it was a direct hit, even a spirit wheel realm expert would find it hard to withstand. However, Nie Tian stood firmly in place, not reacting in the slightest. Only when the terrifying fist shadow was about to touch his body did his body tremble. Instantly, a blue light gushed out and formed a dark blue shield around his body. Chapter 632. Hearing the scream from the arena, everyone's hearts were in their throats, and their gazes were focused on the source of the scream. It was clearly Zhao Hailei who had punched, and Nie Tian was just standing there. Why was it Zhao Hailei who was screaming in panic? At this moment, the crowd did not know Zhao Hailei's shock. He punched out, but when the fist shadow hit Nie Tian's body, it was as if he had bombarded a huge net. Although the fist was strong, there was nowhere for him to exert force. Moreover, his whole body was deeply trapped in the net, and he felt that his opponent was like an endless abyss, firmly clamping him down. "Go down." Then a faint voice sounded. Nie Tian's body shook slightly, and a blue light flashed. Zhao Hailei screamed and fell off the arena. "What's going on?" The sudden scene made the crowd's eyes tremble, and they revealed astonished expressions. Zhao Hailei took the initiative to attack, but he was rebounded by his own strength and directly fell off the arena. This was too strange. You tricked me." Zhao Hailei steadied himself and looked angrily at Nie Tian, who was on the arena. His expression was ugly, and his face was red. "Cheated." Nie Tian glanced at Zhao Hailei, shook his head, and smiled. Suddenly, he took a step forward, and immediately a fierce sword soared into the sky. The sword was majestic, and it whistled out. In the void, there was a clear sound of a sword. A majestic sword shadow rushed towards the near heaven pavilion in the sky. Boom! With a muffled sound, a terrifying palm force pressed down from the near heaven pavilion, blocking the sword shadow. Nie Tian's action was so sudden that even the referee at the side of the arena did not react. In an instant, the entire arena was dead silent. All eyes were on Nie Tian, and their eyes were full of disbelief. Was this guy crazy? He actually attacked the near heaven pavilion. There were people from the 4 aristocratic families there. Did he want to die? All kinds of questions in people's minds were expressed on their faces, and they turned into great shock. At this moment, Zhao Hailei was also stunned. He looked at Nie Tian in a daze, and his mouth was wide open, but he could not make a sound. The sword just now was majestic and terrifying, enough to kill an expert in the first tier of the Divine Wheel. Only now did Zhao Hailei realize that he had encountered an unfathomable opponent. However, none of this was important. The most intriguing thing was Nie Tian's shocking actions. In front of so many people, making a move against the heavenly approaching pavilion was tantamount to challenging the authority of the 4 great clans. This was absolutely courting death. Sure enough, a furious roar resounded in the next moment. Who dares to attack the 4 great clans? As the deep and furious roar resounded, the The first elder of the Mo clan, Mo Xing, was the first to scuttle out. However, when his gaze clearly saw the person below the stage, his expression could not help but stiffen. The person who had attacked was actually Nie Tian. Lord Mo Xing, who is this man? The other three elders also stepped forward. Their gazes locked onto Nie Tian as they asked in astonishment. Everyone in Sumi Ling capital knew the name Nie Tian, but there were not many people who had actually seen him. It was not surprising that the elders of the Tang clan, Gu clan, and Shou clan did not know him. Mo Xing's stiff expression softened slightly as he sneered. Who else would dare to provoke the four great clans on such an occasion other than the newly promoted red-robed elder of the Alchemist Guild? Nie Tian? There was a tinge of sarcasm in his words. It's him. The other three looked at Nie Tian, and their expressions stiffened at the same time. Nie Tian raised his head, smiled brightly, and said, I'm sorry. I made a mistake and disturbed all of you. Please forgive me. Mo Xing, Mo Xiaotian, and the others looked at each other, not knowing what to do for a moment. If anyone else had made such a move, they would definitely have been killed on the spot. However, Nie Tian's identity was different. He was a red-robed elder of the Alchemist Guild. If he was killed because of such a small matter, the Alchemist Guild would definitely not let it go. In addition, what shocked them was that Nie Tian was not only a red-robed elder, but his strength was also so terrifying. It was Mo Xiaotian who had blocked Nie Tian's sword with his palm just now. He was clearer than the others about the power of that sword. It was definitely comparable to a warrior at the fourth tier of the Divine Wheel. Now that he looked at Nie Tian, he felt that Nie Tian had not used his full strength in that sword attack just now. It was just a casual move to test the waters. To be able to achieve such achievements at such a young age, it was indeed extraordinarily terrifying. It's all right, Elder Nie, just be careful next time. Among the four of them, the first to express his stance was a slightly plump elder. He was the great elder of the Gu clan, Gu Hong. Other than being the great elder of the Gu clan, Gu Hong was also Gu Qiulong's grandfather. He had heard Gu Qiulong mention Nie Tian before, and according to Gu Qiulong, Nie Tian had once saved his life. With this relationship, Gu Hong was the first to express his stance, indicating that he would not pursue the matter. In fact, there was no way to pursue this matter. After all, Nie Tian was a red-robed elder and could not be touched. Since Lord Gu Hong has said so, I think we should forget about it. Mo Xiaotian also knew that Nie Tian had a good relationship with Tang 13. Naturally, he was happy to do her a favor and said with a dry laugh. Mo Xing and Qiu Wuxi, the great elder of the Qiu clan, looked at each other. Their expressions were a little ugly, but they did not dare to continue the matter. They only scolded coldly, "Don't do it again." The elders of the four clans immediately returned to the near sky pavilion. The small disturbance was thus settled. The crowd heaved a long sigh of relief. Their expressions were much more relaxed, but the way they looked at Nie Tian had completely changed. It became complicated, cautious, and even respectful. This guy had openly provoked the four big clans, but in the end, he had actually brushed it off with a few words. It was really shocking. Nie Tian's gaze swept across the crowd and saw everyone's reaction. The corner of his mouth curled into a smile. He then glanced at Zhao Hailei and said, "Now, do you still think that I'm cheating?" Zhao Hailei seemed to have woken up from a dream. He gulped and said hurriedly, "I was ignorant. I didn't know that you were Elder Nie Tian. If I have offended you, please forgive me, Elder Nie Tian." Nie Tian nodded slightly. In a flash, his figure flashed, and he left. If he did not forgive him, Zhao Hailei would not have the life to speak. Needless to say, this action of Nie Tian made Gu Yi and Zhao Qua, who were watching from the outside, break out in cold sweat. If the elders of the four big clans did not give face to the Alchemist Association, or if they joined forces, they could say that Nie Tian had provoked the four big clans and wanted to kill him. That would be troublesome. Fortunately, the four big clans appear to be harmonious on the surface, but they were divided internally and did not join forces. Big Brother Gu, wasn't Elder Nie's action a little overboard? Zhao calmed down and asked in a low voice. Gumi nodded his head, but soon after, he shook his head and sighed. I don't know either. He knew that Nie Tianqing's background was extremely deep, and he absolutely did not want to steal the limelight. For him to do such an action, there must be a deeper meaning. Gui's guess was right. Nie Tian's sword earlier, on the surface, was just to prove his strength to Zhao Hailei, but there were two other meanings behind it. Firstly, it was to test the attitude of the four big clans. It was very obvious that the Tang and Gu families treated him rather well, but the Mo and Qiu families had a completely different attitude. This point, Nie Tian secretly noted it down. The other meaning was that Nie Tian wanted to show his identity to everyone, so that his following battles would be much easier. Knowing his identity and witnessing his strength, most people would choose to admit defeat. Nie Tian did not want to fight one match after another. It was too boring and tiring. Following that, the martial meet continued. Chapter 633. Nie Tian looked towards the seventh stage. Of the two warriors on it, one was very ordinary, while the other was very strange. This person wore a black cloak, and his appearance was ugly and strange. His face was 30% human and 70% wolf. His body was stooped, and he was much shorter than an ordinary person. At a certain moment, Nie Tian noticed this person's eyes, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. This person's gaze was cold, like a wolf waiting for an opportunity in the night, as if he could jump out and eat people at any time. This person's aura seems a little familiar. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he tried his best to recall. Suddenly, he thought of a person, Black Qilin. That's right, this person's aura was somewhat similar to the Black Qilin of the Long family. The person who appeared on the martial stage was none other than the fool of the Long family, Long Heir. Standing in front of Long Heir was an expert of the 9th level of true essence. He was in his 40s, and his talent was not bad. When this person saw Long Heir's appearance, his gaze couldn't help but tremble. He then laughed in disdain and ridiculed. You are neither a human nor a ghost. I really don't know why the Shumi Martial Assembly would let a monster like you register. Long Heir's appearance was too strange. If an ordinary person saw him, their first reaction would definitely be shock. Monster! Long Heir's voice sounded out. His hoarse voice carried a dense oppression as he sinisterly said, a person's appearance is nothing more than a bag of skin. It's useless to look good. In this world, only strength is the most important. Just like the current you have a good body, but it's a pity that you will soon die in my hands. Tell me, what's the use of your appearance? His voice wasn't loud, but it contained a strong, killing intent. When that person felt the cold, killing intent from Long Heir's body, his body actually trembled, and his face was filled with shock. However, he was a martial artist of the 9th level of true essence after all. He immediately calmed down and roared, You monster! You are too arrogant. Who will win and who will lose in our battle is still not certain. As his furious voice fell, that person's Yuan meridian started to circulate. Surging Yuan energy surged out. True essence wrapped around his entire body. His aura was valiant, and he was prepared to attack with all his might. What a mess. Long Heir stood in place, not moving at all. He spat out 2 words, not putting his opponent in his eyes at all. Courting death. That person was thoroughly enraged. He roared, and a berserk aura bloomed in the sky. A long spear appeared in his hand, and he slashed it in the air. A sharp light flashed, and a sharp whistling sound rang out. A sharp spear image whizzed out and pounced towards Long Two. Long Two. This aura was very violent and filled with a sharp aura. It almost had the power to cut through the void. However, in the eyes of Long Heir, such an attack was practically non-existent. He viewed it as nothing. In the next moment, the spear image pressed over. Long Two lightly raised his hand and sent out a palm strike. A line of fire flew through the air at an extremely fast speed. Immediately after, a heart-wrenching scream rang out. That seemingly powerless line of fire directly passed through the spear shadow and turned into a fire snake, tightly binding the cultivator in front of it. In the blink of an eye, Before anyone could react, that cultivator had been burned to ashes. Long Tu retracted his arm, and the fire snake unexpectedly returned to his body. Upon seeing this bizarre scene, Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly. He could clearly see that the flame snake that Long Air had unleashed seemed to be his primordial spirit, yet it didn't seem like it at the same time. He had a feeling that something was missing. Long Tu's martial skill was somewhat strange. It instantly killed a cultivator in the 9th level of true essence. Its power was even more terrifying. Moreover, Nietian could see that Long Tu's true strength had not been displayed at all. He had hidden it very deeply. What's going on? When the crowd saw this scene, they were even more astonished and exclaimed one after another. Long Tu did not even look at his opponent. Instead, he swept his gaze over, and a cold light flashed in his eyes as he directly locked onto Nietian. Nietian also looked at his opponent. The corners of his mouth slightly curled up. He was not afraid. Long Tu did not speak. He stared at Nietian for a while. Then his figure leaped, and he directly left. Nietian sighed slightly. It was obvious that this person was from the Long family and had a very close relationship with the Qilin Lord. This person participating in the Sumra martial meet was definitely for revenge. Nietian could feel that this guy's strength was not inferior to Ji Tinghai's. Following that, the martial meet continued. Nietian's battle today was very easy. In the remaining 7 battles, 6 people directly admitted defeat. The only one who did not admit defeat was defeated by him in a single move. Although Nietian and Long Tu were on the same martial stage, they did not meet each other. After ending his battle early, Nietian went to the viewing platform, preparing to see if there were any opponents worthy of his attention. Very quickly, he arrived beside Gu Yi and Zhao Kuo. Elder Nya, Hailei has caused you trouble just now. I apologize on his behalf. Zhao Kuo looked at Nietian and said respectfully, "It's a small matter." Nietian smiled faintly, indicating that he should not take it to heart. At this moment, Nietian saw a familiar figure appear on a martial stage not far away, immediately attracting his attention. A guy wearing a mask. Is he too ashamed to face others? Zhao Kuo also looked at the person on the martial stage, his arms crossed in front of his chest, and sneered. Gu Yi also noticed this person. He used his divine senses to sense him, and his expression stiffened slightly. With a dark expression, he said, "Brother Zhao, you have to be careful with what you say. This faceless person is even stronger than you. He is actually at the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. It seems that the Sumeru martial meet this time will be very exciting." 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. Zhao Kuo let out a strange cry and said, "Impossible. This guy should not be more than 30 years old, and his strength is at the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. Is this a joke?" Gu Yi rolled his eyes and said, "Do I look like I'm joking?" Zhao Kuo's face stiffened, and he said in shock, "It really is the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel." Nietian looked at the faceless person, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a strange smile. He thought to himself, "Ruoyu, I really want to see how strong you are." This expert of the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel was none other than Ruoyu. Nietian did not expect that Ruoyu would also participate in the Sumeru martial meet. Not long ago, Ruoyu only had the strength of the 1st tier of the Divine Wheel. Nietian did not find it strange that she had the strength of the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel now. He had the 9-yang body, and the blood qi in his body was several times or even dozens of times stronger than that of ordinary people. Even if he directly swallowed the demon god flower, he could still refine it and absorb more of the medicinal power of the demon god flower, which was better than refining it into a panacea. The 9-yang body, a heaven stage spiritual body of heaven and earth, was just that domineering. At this moment, Gu Yi suddenly saw the person opposite Ryu. His eyes trembled violently, and he said in surprise, "It's Tang Sheng." Tang Sheng? Nietian was stunned for a moment. Then he noticed the person opposite Ryu, and his face immediately stiffened. He used his spiritual sense to sense the person, and his eyes trembled. The other party was actually an ancient martial art practitioner of the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. Elder, who is this person? Nye Tian asked with a slight frown. Chapter 634. Tang Hao's son. Hearing Gu Yi's words, Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. The muscles on his face couldn't help but tremble, revealing a hint of unconcealable excitement. Gu Yi saw that Nye Tian's reaction was a little big, so he was stunned for a moment and said, Brother Nye, you know Tang Sheng? Nye Tian withdrew his gaze, smiled faintly, and said, I don't know Tang Sheng, but his strength and talent are not bad, which is surprising. Brother Nye, no matter how high Tang Sheng's talent is, in front of you, I'm afraid he is still far behind. Why are you so surprised? Gu Yi smiled and said, as if he didn't believe it. Tang Sheng used to be the #1 genius on the genius ranking in Mount Meru. However, compared to Nye Tian, Jiting Hai, and even true Serene, who stood in front of him, his talent was far inferior. With Nye Tian's eyes, he shouldn't be so surprised. Nye Tian's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything else. Seeing that Nye Tian didn't want to say, Gu Yi didn't ask anymore and focused on the arena. The battle between Raindrop and Tang Sheng attracted the attention of most people. Most people recognized Tang Sheng, but they didn't know who Raindrop was. Who is this guy wearing a mask? He's so mysterious. What's the use of being mysterious? If he meets Lord Tang Sheng, he will lose. That's true. I heard that Lord Tang Sheng was already a spirit will expert 10 years ago. His current strength must be unfathomable. That mask guy is out of luck. The crowd couldn't see the strength of Tang Sheng and Raindrop, so they started discussing. At this moment, above the near-heaven pavilion, for blazing eyes focused on them. At this moment, Mo Xing and the others didn't look too good, especially when they looked at Raindrop. Of course, they could sense the latter's strength, but they felt strange. Where did this guy come from? He was so strong. Raindrop, together with Long Air, there were too many monstrous warriors in this Shumi martial meet. Their talent was not below the 3 monstrous geniuses of Sumi Ling capital. This time's Shumi martial meet would be even more exciting. Lord Mo shouted on. Who do you think will win this battle? The corner of Mo Xing's mouth twitched. He let out a strange laugh and asked in a profound manner. He clearly knew that Rainey's strength was not inferior to Tang Sheng's, but he still asked Mo Xiaotian in this way. Obviously, he had the mentality of watching a good show. Mo Xiaotian's expression was indifferent. A hint of contempt flashed in his eyes as he said, Tang Sheng and the Faceless Man are equally matched. The outcome of this battle is hard to predict. Really? Almost before Mo Xiaotian finished speaking, Qiu Wuxi, who was at the side, let out a strange laugh and said, The Faceless Man is about 10 years younger than Tang Sheng. Being able to reach the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel at such a young age, one can imagine how talented he is. If Tang Sheng wants to win this round, I can only say 3 words, impossible. Mo Xiaotian glanced at Qiu Wuxi sharply. He was slightly annoyed, but he did not refute. Although he really hoped that Tang Sheng would win, his opponent was really too strong, and he would most likely lose this battle. On the martial arts arena, Rainey and Tang Sheng stood looking at each other. They did not speak, but the moment their eyes met, they could already feel the strength of their opponent. In particular, Tang Sheng could feel the calmness in Rainey's eyes, which made his heart tremble. He could be considered as a person who had experienced countless battles, but it was the first time he had seen an opponent like Rainey. Peerless talent, strong strength, calm temperament, and firm eyes. Rainey made Tang Sheng feel a great threat from Rainey. Are you from the Tang family? Rainey suddenly said indifferently. Her voice was calm and emotionless. Tang Sheng's eyes narrowed slightly. He nodded and said, You don't have to worry. On the martial arts arena, there is no distinction of status. The Tang family can afford to lose and also to die. He mistakenly thought that Rainey did not dare to attack him because he was from the Tang family, so he explained. Rainey's pupils shrank slightly. She seemed to be touched, but then she calmed down and said lightly, Very well, you are worthy of my sword. Rainey stretched out her hand, and a simple and unadorned sword appeared. It kept trembling in her hand, releasing a strange sword cry. It was as low as an insect's cry, but when it fell into Tang Sheng's ears, it was like a roar that shook the world. What a terrifying sword! Seeing the simple and unadorned sword in her opponent's hand, Tang Sheng's eyes could not help trembling, and his voice was filled with unconcealable surprise. The ancient sword hummed strangely, causing Tang Sheng's ghost eye to feel threatened. My sword is the sword of primordial spirit, and it is called the Nine Suns variant. Today, I will use this sword to test the ghost eye of the Tang family. Rainey said lightly. Her eyes released the sharpness of a swordsman, and her sword essence slowly surged out, covering the surrounding space. What a terrifying sword realm. On the spectator's stand, even though they were separated by 1,000 meters, Nietian could still clearly feel the sword essence of Rainey's body. It was the sword spirit realm. He had seen Rainey a few times before, but he had rarely seen him fight, let alone use a sword. Nietian did not expect Rainey to be a swordsman at the sword spirit realm. His sword was the Nine Suns variant, the sword of primordial spirit, and it was very terrifying. It could exert the sword essence of 9 suns to the extreme. Since Rainey had used his sword, Tang Sheng was in danger. Unless his ghost eye could open up to the triple blade ghost eye, he would not stand a chance. One move to decide the winner. Rainey's eyes were still calm, but her voice was cold. 2 warriors at the 4th tier of the spirit wheel wanted to decide the winner with one move. It was a rare scene. On the first day of the Meru martial meet, they could see a real battle between 2 strong warriors. Everyone on the spectator stand focused their attention on them. Even the warriors in the surrounding arenas all turned around, forgetting about their own battles. They were all focused on the battle between Rain and Tang Sheng. Tang Sheng's heart trembled violently, and he nodded slightly. The 2 of them did not speak anymore. The next moment, Ruoyu's silhouette moved. She stabbed out with her sword. Suddenly, an extremely murderous sword will bloomed in the air. The entire space above the battle stage was suddenly tightened by the sword will. It seemed like it was going to freeze. At this moment, Tang Sheng's eyes suddenly opened. 2 strange ghost blades flashed in each of his pupils. Double blade ghost eye. The pupil power of the ghost eye turned into a murderous force. It was invisible and attacked. The next moment, the space was compressed to the extreme, as if it would split at any time. There was an intense collision sound in the air. Then, the space returned to normal. Rainey and Tang Sheng stood on the arena. Their bodies were like a bell, and they did not move. What happened? Everyone's eyes were trembling. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. They did not even see how the 2 of them fought, and the battle was already over. Who won? Seeing the 2 of them standing still, the crowd asked in their hearts. Chapter 635. Lost. The crowd was stunned. They simply didn't know what had just happened. Tang Sheng turned around. On his neck, there was a thin red line of blood. He walked a few steps, but suddenly stopped. He didn't turn around and only opened his mouth to say, "Why didn't you kill me?" The line of blood on his neck was left by true Suruwayu. If the line of blood had been slightly more forceful, his head would have already fallen to the ground. It was obvious that true Suruwayu did it on purpose, but she didn't want his life. True Suruwayu shook her head and said, "You and I aren't enemies. We're just temporary opponents. There's no need to take your life." Tang Sheng nodded. His figure flashed and disappeared. True Suruwayu also turned around and left. A battle between experts that wasn't flashy ended just like that. However, the waves that this battle set off in people's hearts didn't subside, especially for those experts who had seen through the trick of it. Nietian frowned slightly. True Suruwayu's sword just now was extremely fast and powerful. Even the double-edged ghost eyes couldn't dodge it. In all fairness, if this sword landed on his body, although Nietian wouldn't die, he would definitely be injured. Now, Nietian knew that he had underestimated true Suruwayu's strength. On the other side, Ji Tinghai looked at true Suruwayu's back from afar. His gaze revealed a rare sense of fear. "Tinghai, if you didn't use the spiritual formation in your body for that sword just now, how confident are you in taking it?" Ji Wuxiu stood beside Ji Tinghai. His stiff expression relaxed as he suddenly asked, Ji Tinghai frowned and said, 50%. This. Ji Wuxiu's gaze trembled. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. According to Ji Tinghai, if he didn't use the rank 6 spiritual formation in his body, there was a 50% chance that he would die on the spot from true Suruo Yu's sword. True Suruo Yu's strength was actually this terrifying. Ji Wuxiu originally thought that in this Shumi martial meet, Ji Tinghai's biggest enemy was Nie Tian, Mo Yu, and the others. However, he now knew that true Suruo Yu might be the most terrifying opponent. As for the others, Mo Yuyo, Tian Jin, and the others, they were all overwhelmed with shock and were speechless for a long time. Only Long Air looked at Ruo Yu with a playful expression. Not only was there no fear on his ugly face, but instead he revealed an excited expression. He muttered, "The Shumi martial meet is getting more and more interesting." In the following battles, not many people caught Nie Tian's attention. There were only a few warriors in their 40s and 50s who were above the spirit wheel realm. However, they posed no threat to Nie Tian. The first day of battles ended quickly, and all the martial artist scores were quickly announced. On the first day, in addition to the martial artists who had negative points and were directly eliminated, there were also those who were killed on the spot, severely injured, and those who withdrew from the competition. There were originally more than 3,000 participants, but now there were only about 1,000 left. More than half had been eliminated. Nietan, Mo Rushi, Qiushan, and the rest were not eliminated and successfully entered the second day. After leaving the Sumeru arena, Nie Tian and the others immediately returned to the Gu residence. Just as Xiao Chan was about to enter the Gu residence, the corpse demon sovereign's voice suddenly rang out. "Master, that fellow came to the Shumi spiritual capital." That fellow? Nie Tian was slightly stunned, unable to react. Wu Feng. The corpse demon sovereign's voice trembled slightly as he said name. Wu Feng. Nie Tian was stunned. Then, he frowned and exclaimed, "He came to the Shumi spiritual capital." Wu Feng had the corpse demon sovereign's curse mark on him, so the latter could know his every move. At the same time, in a hidden mountain forest in the Shumi spiritual capital, several figures appeared, walking slowly. One of them was extremely familiar. It was Wu Feng, who refined the 5 poison blood infant. At this moment, Wu Feng's expression was unsightly. He trembled in fear, seeming somewhat afraid. For people followed behind Wu Feng. Their auras were deep, and their eyes were sharp. They were all 6-layer divine wheel experts. These 4 people all wore demon masks and gave off a dense corpse aura, looking like corpses that had rotted for a long time. However, these 4 people were definitely alive. For them to look like that, they must have cultivated some kind of evil cultivation technique. After a while, they arrived at a mountain peak and stopped, looking like they were waiting for someone. Not long after these people stopped, a horrifying killing intent suddenly appeared on the mountain peak in front of them. It instantly spread out, and a black beam of light soared into the sky. Bang! In the next moment, an intense explosion rang out. A black figure appeared on the mountain peak, standing on a huge rock in the distance. Wu Feng was horrified. When he looked up, he saw the figure on the mountain peak hidden in a clump of black energy. It was like the figure did not have a physical body, looking extremely strange. The instant that black figure appeared, the 4 masked men knelt together and said in unison, "The 4 ghosts of the netherworld greet the ghost monarch." Ghost monarch? Wu Feng was stunned when he heard how the 4 people addressed him. His face turned pale with fright, and he knelt down with a thud. Trembling, he said, "Subordinate, Wu Feng greets the ghost monarch." "For ghosts, step down first," the black figure said. The black shadow opened his mouth. His voice was cold and choked. It was intermittent like a sigh from hell. "Yes," the 4 ghosts of the netherworld answered. Their figures disappeared like ghosts. Wu Feng knelt on the ground, not daring to raise his head. The black figure on the huge rock flickered and instantly appeared in front of Wu Feng. It condensed into a human figure and said coldly, "Wu Feng, stand up." Wu Feng's heart trembled. He stood up, trembling. Only then did he realize that there was someone standing in front of him. He mustered up his courage and looked at this person, only to see a pair of eyes that were as deep as black holes, releasing a chill that sent chills down one's spine. He knew that the person in front of him was none other than the legendary pavilion master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, Nether Ghost. The Nether Ghost monarch was Nether Ghost. Wu Feng, where is my 5 poisons blood infant? Nether Ghost asked coldly, without the slightest emotion. Wu Feng's heart trembled when he heard the name 5 poisons blood infant. His face turned deathly pale, and he couldn't help but tremble. His knees buckled, and he knelt down again. Lord Pavilion Master, please spare my life. I was incompetent, and the 5 poisons blood infant was stolen. HM? Nether Ghost's voice suddenly sank. His face turned slightly cold, and he asked, who took it? One of the 2 5 poisons blood infants was used by Wu Feng to kill Hui Yuan, and the other was taken by Nye Tian. Nya. Tian. Feeling the pressure of a cold aura, Wu Feng's voice trembled as he uttered a name. Nya. Tian. Nether Ghost's face turned cold, and his abyss-like eyes released a sharp, killing intent. He had heard this name more than once. The vice pavilion master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, Wan Chirong, was killed by Nye Tian. For ghosts of the netherworld, Nether Ghost's body trembled slightly, and he shouted, Yes, Lord Pavilion Master. In the void, 4 corpse-like figures appeared. Take back the 5 poisons blood infant, Nether Ghost said coldly. Immediately, his body turned into a cloud of black gas and disappeared. Chapter 636. The night sky was as deep as water. A figure flickered in the dark night in the Gu residence. It was none other than Nye Tian. Just earlier, Wu Feng sent word that Nether Ghost sent someone to snatch the 5 poison blood infant. After receiving this news, Nye Tian immediately went to her room. Little brother Nye, why are you here? Gu Yi happened to be in the room. When he saw Nye Tian arrive, he chuckled. Nye Tian's gaze landed on a wooden barrel, in which a 5 to 6 month old baby was swimming. The baby's body was surrounded by a pungent medicinal liquid. I'm here to take a look at the little fellow. Nye Tian smiled faintly without changing his expression. The baby in the wooden tub was the 5 poison blood infant. However, the 5 poison blood infant was no longer as ugly as before. Instead, it slowly recovered its infant appearance, looking no different from an ordinary baby. However, its ears were still somewhat sharp. After half a month of medicinal baths, Nye Tian was very satisfied with the 5 poison blood infant's recovery to such an extent. Although Nye Tian already knew that someone was coming to snatch the 5 poison blood infant, he was not willing to tell Gu Yi about this. At this moment, there were not many experts in the Gu residence. If he leaked this information, it would only incite unnecessary panic. Nye Tian walked over and played with the baby for a while. The corner of his mouth rose as he thought to himself, Little guy, it's fate that we met. I saved you, so I won't let anyone take you away from me. After making up his mind, Nye Tian stood up and said goodbye to Gu Yi before turning to leave. After a while, Nye Tian found Elder Yi and Xiushan. Then, he brought them to the courtyard where the 5 poison blood infant was. He said, There are uninvited guests in the Gu residence tonight. Stand guard here and don't let anyone near this courtyard. Not even the Gu residence's people. Nye Tian did not know who Nether Ghost would send to snatch the baby. Perhaps it was an expert with illusions. If this person controlled someone in the Gu residence and took away the 5 poison blood infant, it would be terrible. Who is coming? Seeing Nye Tian's serious expression, Elder Yi couldn't help but become nervous and asked, Someone from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nye Tian did not hide anything and simply explained how he had controlled Wu Feng. Elder Yi and Underworld Ghost had a grudge that would not rest until one of them was dead. This matter should be told to him. After that, Nye Tian called out Gu Yi and got him to inform everyone in the Gu residence to not come out of their rooms no matter what. Gu Yi saw that Nye Tian, Elder Yi, and the others looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy, so he didn't ask any questions. He agreed and went to carry out his task. I'll wait for them outside. Nye Tian nodded slightly. Then his figure flashed, and he quickly left the Gu residence. He leaped up and stood on the high wall. He closed his eyes slightly, and his whole body seemed to be shrouded in darkness. Niet Tian's divine sense spread out, and the slightest movement of grass within a 5-kilometer radius was all within his control. It was unknown how long he had been in this state. Several figures silently appeared in Xiao Qin's sea of consciousness, moving silently like ghosts in the dark night. However, none of this escaped Niet Tian's perception. The 4 netherworld ghosts quickly hid in the dark night, undetectable. Soon, they arrived outside the Gu residence. The 4 of them glanced at each other. 2 of them leaped up and streaked across the sky without making a sound. The surroundings were filled with a sinister aura. "Since you are here, aren't you going to greet me?" Just at this moment, Niet Tian suddenly opened his eyes, and his voice rang out. Then he took a step forward and stood in midair, blocking the 2 figures. These 2 figures suddenly stopped in the air. Their cold eyes flickered in the dark night, appearing extremely shocked. To think that Niet Tian had been waiting for them. Whoosh, whoosh. The 2 of them didn't say a word. Instead, they moved and unleashed 2 black chains that shot directly towards Niet Tian. The moment the black chain appeared, Niet Tian sensed a familiar aura, causing him to let out a cry of surprise. Demon sealing runes. The corpse demon sovereign's shocked voice rang out from the primal chaos origin coffin. That was right. The aura that the black chains released was the aura of the demon sealing runes. Niet Tian looked carefully. The black chains were exactly the same as the death god's chains on Elder Ye's back. The only difference was that the demon sealing runes on these 2 death gods' chains were slightly weaker. Niet Tian's pupils constricted, and sword images materialized a pair of wings on his back. He moved like the wind, moving extremely fast and dodging the attacks of the death god's chains. The 2 figures exclaimed at the same time. Then, the death god's chains clanged and turned into 2 beams of black light, launching themselves at Niet Tian. Feeling the suffocating pressure, Niet Tian frowned slightly. The absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand, and all the origin power in his body suddenly exploded. He stabbed out with his sword, and the sword will surged out. A majestic sword shadow shot out. Boom! There was a loud and clear sound in the air, and it actually caused a burst of electric sparks. Swoosh! The next moment, a beam of black light brushed past Niet Tian's body, leaving a sizable wound on him. Niet Tian's figure retreated quickly, but he felt a strange power invading his body, disrupting the meridians in his limbs. Niet Tian's heart trembled violently. The 9 dragon-shaped origin meridians in his body quickly activated, forcing that power out. The strength of the 6th tier of the divine wheel is indeed powerful, Niet Tian muttered as his gaze tightened. His opponents were 2 strong practitioners of the 6th tier of the divine wheel. When they attacked together, the power was unimaginable. If not for the fact that Niet Tian's physique far surpassed that of cultivators of the same level, that demon sealing talisman would have instantly sealed his origin meridians. Hey! Seeing that Niet Tian was only injured and not dead, the 2 people on the ground exclaimed again. Just at this moment, the 2 figures on the ground moved. They leaped up like the wind, trying to avoid Niet Tian and enter the Gu residence. Don't even think about it. Niet Tianling laughed. His figure flashed, and his sword rose into the air. A horrifying sword intent bloomed in the air. At the same time, the astral soul steel in Xiao Chen's body sensed something and released an astral soul. Immediately, surging astral energy surged out. The sky flickered with starlight and instantly turned into blazing flames that looked like fire snakes flicking their tongues. Blazing flames burning the sea. Niet Tian let out a furious roar as he slashed down with his heaven-end sword. Sword light shone brightly, and the terrifying sword intent he emanated was so strong that it was almost tangible. In the next moment, a majestic sword shadow descended from the heavens towards the 2 figures in midair. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 2 people were startled by the might of this sword strike. Their eyes suddenly trembled, and 2 grim reaper chains surged out. In midair, 1 turned into 3, and then 3 turned into 9. Like this, the Grim Reaper chains condensed into a vast ocean. It was like a huge, formless net, emanating the horrifying aura of the demon's sealing talisman. Chapter 637. The 4 ghosts of the Netherworld attacked at the same time. This was a rare scene, especially when the 4 of them joined forces to kill a warrior at the 2nd tier of the Divine Wheel. This was the first time. The strength that Nyation displayed just now was too strange. It was enough for the 4 of them to attack together. Nyation was attacked from both front and back. His eyes suddenly narrowed. In front of him, countless death gods' chains were like tentacles, rapidly extending over. They were like a black ocean, moving at an incredible speed. They covered the sky and covered the earth, releasing a dense, baleful aura. Behind him, there was a long black snake. It was as swift as the wind and lightning. Its aura was sharp, and it was surging with the most extreme, killing intent. Nyation had already made his move. For the first time, he used his 5th-rank star soul, Blazing Sea. A cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. The other party was from the Ling Xian Pavilion, and they were here for the 5 poison blood infant. This had already angered Nyation. At this moment, he had already made up his mind. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to take the lives of these 4 people. With this thought, Nyation's eyes became determined. The wings on his back flapped, and he suddenly sped up. On his body, the power of the stars was still continuously surging and turning into blazing flames in the air. His body was surrounded by a terrifying sea of flames. What a terrifying power! The 2 people in front of Nyation could not restrain the surprise in their hearts. They looked at each other with unconcealable fear in their eyes. They did not expect Nyation's strength to be so terrifying. The power of his sword made them feel like they could not resist it. Retreat. The 2 of them spat out at the same time. They retreated quickly and did not dare to fight head-on with Nyation. Too late. The corners of Nyation's mouth curled up coldly. With a roar, the aura of his whole body shrouded over. The sea of flames became raging and actually drowned the large net formed by the death god's chains. Blazing snakes of fire shot out and rushed towards the 2 people. It was even more terrifying than the death god's chains. While the 2 of them were still in midair, they felt the space around them solidify. Their speed immediately slowed, and soon after, their entire bodies were enveloped by the fiery snakes. Almost at the same time, the black snake behind Nyation attacked. It was less than 5 meters away from him. At such a close distance, no matter how fast Nyation was, it was impossible for him to dodge. At the critical moment, a layer of dark blue light lit up around Nyation's body. He activated the sky armor of Water Pole. At the same time, the dragon scale chi in his body was also released, forming a layer of dragon scale golden light shield. Since he had chosen to kill the 2 people in front of him, he had never thought about avoiding the attacks from the 2 people behind him. This time, he wanted to use the advantage of his physique to kill the 4 Hades ghosts. Courting death. The 2 ghosts behind him couldn't help but sneer when they saw that Nyation had actually withstood the attack of the death god's chains. Both of them were at the 6th tier of the Divine Wheel. The death god's chains in each of their bodies were enough to kill an ancient martial art practitioner of the same tier. Moreover, even an ancient martial art practitioner at the 7th or 8th tier of the Divine Wheel would find it difficult to withstand the combined attack of the 2 of them. Nyation was only at the 2nd tier of the Divine Wheel. If he wanted to withstand the combined attack of the 2 of them, it was no different from a fool's dream. The night was like a black curtain. In such an environment, the frightening battle was even more intense and tense. 2 blood-curdling screams overlapped and compressed into a heart-wrenching, lung-splitting wail. The 2 people who were enveloped by the fiery serpents seemed to be burned by raging flames. The masks on their faces quickly deformed, revealing 2 abnormally terrifying faces. These 2 faces were like shriveled corpses. There was not a single bit of flesh or blood on them. If it weren't for the 2 pairs of eyeballs that were still moving, they would be no different from dry corpses. The intense pain of being burned by the raging flames caused them to cry out in pain. The death god's chains quickly retracted and immediately turned into a black snake. It circled around their bodies and wrapped around their corpse-like bodies. Seeing this scene, Niet Tian frowned, and his expression became slightly grave. In the next moment, the black snake behind him attacked. It was fast and fierce, and the force that had suddenly burst forth directly shattered the dragon scale shield around Niet Tian's body. At the same time, his heavenly water pole yuan armor was also pierced through, turning into a dark blue mist and dissipating in the air. The sound of flesh being pierced rang out. A black light flashed, and Niet Tian's body trembled. Immediately after, a bloody hole appeared on his chest, and an intense pain surged through his entire body. He had underestimated the joint attack of the Yuming children and ghosts. Not only did it break through his 2 layers of defense, but it also directly pierced through his body. In midair, blood splattered everywhere, and a bloody smell pervaded the air. The pain of flesh and blood was nothing to Niet Tian at all. However, the power of the 2 demon-sealing runes invaded the wound, and before he could react, the power of the runes had already been applied to the 9 dragon-shaped yuan meridians. Niet Tian's face was as pale as a sheet. His body swayed in the air, and he almost lost his balance. At this moment, the 9 dragon-shaped yuan meridians suddenly released streaks of purple lightning power. Niet Tian felt a majestic dragon roar resounding in his mind. It was earth-shaking and boundless. The scene of him merging the 9-star dragon meridians in the rising dragon killing formation seemed to appear before his eyes. His divine sense entered a sealed space in an instant. It was the space where he was tempering his body with the dragon meridians. Strong gales whistled past his ears, and the surrounding space was filled with colorful flowing lights. Niet Tian looked around. The 9 golden giant dragons, each of which was 1,000 meters long, were circling around him. The dazzling purple lightning power filled the air, forming a sea of lightning. In this sea of lightning, the power of the black runes was tumbling, and it seemed to be in extreme pain. In the blink of an eye, it was directly devoured. Niet Tian frowned and suddenly understood. This seemed to be the space within his 9 dragon-shaped yuan meridians. He moved his divine sense, and the scene in front of him disappeared. He returned to the deep night sky again. Niet Tian looked down. The bloody hole in his chest was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the demon-sealing runes in his body had completely disappeared. How is this possible? The 4 Hades ghosts saw this scene, and they were extremely astonished. They exclaimed in unison. Niet Tian was clearly pierced by the death god's chain, and the demon-sealing runes had already invaded his body. His yuan meridians should have been sealed, and he should have fallen to the ground and died. Why was he still standing in the air unscathed? The 2 people who were hit by Niet Tian's sea of flames were now covered in blood, and their shriveled skin was falling off piece by piece. From afar, they looked like 2 skeletons with rotten flesh hanging on them. It was hard to imagine that these 2 fellows could still be alive after being in such a state. Niet Tianling laughed, and his eyes locked onto the 2 people behind him. Killing intent flashed across his eyes, and he suddenly leaped up and shouted, "Prepare to die." Chapter 638. The sword chi surged, and the sword was forceful. The 2 were stunned for a moment before they reacted. 2 death gods' chains were released and intertwined to form a giant net in the air. Kaboom! A violent explosion sounded. The boundless sword will exploded, and the giant net in the air shattered. Seeing this scene, the 2's eyes trembled and their bodies swayed. Niet Tian's sword was so terrifying that even the combined defense of the 2 was broken. At this moment, the 2 suddenly realized that Niet Tian's sword was more than twice as strong as before. However, Niet Tian's strength did not increase. He did not even use his star soul for this attack. How could it explode with power that was more terrifying than a 5th-grade star soul? Sword will. At this moment, one of them seemed to sense something. His shriveled pupils suddenly shrank, and he exclaimed, "His sword has become stronger." Nietion's figure stood proudly in the air. The proud sword wings on his back retracted slightly and seemed to be surging with an unprecedented power. It was this power that made his sword will even more terrifying. You are quite knowledgeable. You should be glad that you could die under my sword will, because you are the first people to see my thunderbolt sword will. Nietion's lips curled into a confident, domineering, and cold smile. He said, "You will be the first to die under my thunderbolt sword will." Thunderbolt sword will. That's right. When he was in the dragon-shaped Yuan Meridian, the Thunderbolt Sea gave Nietion's 9 Yuan Meridians a different attribute, the Thunderbolt attribute. Therefore, his sword will contain another kind of power, the power of Thunderbolt. This time, Nietion unexpectedly comprehended a third sword will, the Thunderbolt sword will. At this moment, Nietion was a swordsman who possessed 3 sword wills. He was definitely the first swordsman to do so. The Proud Sword technique gave him the Proud Sword will. The 10th Yuan Meridian, the Star Raw Stone, gave him the Star Soul Sword will. And now, the 9 Yuan Meridians that merged with the 9 Star Dragon Meridians gave him the Thunderbolt Sword will. Any one of these 3 sword intents were top-notch sword intents, comparable to the world's top swordsman. When the 3 sword intents fused together, the power that could erupt out was even more unimaginable. If there was a day when Nietion reached the peak of the Sword Dao and comprehended 3 sword essences, he would become the first person in the history of the Sword Dao to create a new world. As far as Nietion knew, no one had ever comprehended 3 sword profundities at the same time. If he could do it, then it would be enough for him to look down on his former opponents in the way of the sword. The Thunderbolt sword intent seemed to have an extremely strong restraining effect on the demon sealing curse. Just now, Nietion's casual sword strike directly broke through the joint attack of the 2 was proof. Recalling the scene in the space of a dragon vein, where the sea of lightning swallowed the demon sealing curse in an instant, Nietion was even more convinced of this. There's something strange about his sword intent. Let's attack together and kill him. The 4 ghosts of the Hades also felt the restraining effect of the Thunderbolt's sword intent on the Death God's chains. One of them said, and the 4 figures immediately gathered together. For pairs of cold eyes locked onto Nietion at the same time. Very well, I also want to try how strong the Thunderbolt sword intent is. Facing the joint attack of the 4 of them, Nietion was fearless. Instead, he smiled faintly with a tinge of disdain and excitement in his eyes. "Young man, you are the first to force us, the 4 ghosts of the Hades, to team up." The person who spoke earlier sneered, and the Death God's chains surged out of his body like a scorpion revealing its poisonous stinger. The other 3 did the same. The 4 Death God's chains linked together, and the power of the demon sealing curse filled the air. A suffocating aura spread out. Feeling the power, Nietion immediately understood that the 4 Death God's chains of the 4 ghosts of the Hades seemed to have some kind of connection. When they were combined, they could explode with power that was several times stronger. His eyes flickered, but he was not afraid. "Young man, die." The next moment, the 4 ghosts of the Hades shouted angrily at the same time. The 4 Death God's chains turned into 4 beams of black light that were sharp and murderous. They were extremely fast and merged into one in the air. Like a raging black snake, they pounced on Nietion. In an instant, Nietion felt the space suddenly tighten. His body was surrounded by the powerful curse power, and a suffocating pressure spread out. The 4 ghosts of the Hades had cultivated together since they were young. Needless to say, they had a tacit understanding with each other. The most important thing was that the demon-sealing curse on the Death God's chains in their bodies could explode with even more power once they were combined. The power of the curse was enough to make a 9th-tier divine wheel martial artist fearful. However, the power of the curse seals didn't pose any threat to Nietion at all. Wanting to use the power of the demon-sealing curse to kill Nietion was no different from a fool's dream. Raging sea torrent kill. Facing the combined attack of the 4 ghosts of the Hades, Nietion was not afraid at all. With a roar, Swordwell gushed out from his body. Another Star Soul was released from the Star Soul tablet. The endless power of the stars and the Swordwell merged perfectly, causing Niet Tion's body to be surrounded by the sword will and starlight. Buzz! In the space, an intense sword cry rang out, cutting through the silence of the night sky. The sword will and starlight converged together. A terrifying sword shadow appeared and whizzed out like a raging wave. Suddenly, the arrogance of the proud sword will, the vastness of the thunderbolt sword will, the purity of the star soul sword will, and the power of the fifth-tier star soul raging sea torrent erupted in an instant like a landslide and a tsunami. The four ghosts of the Hades felt the rolling momentum coming towards them. They felt like a lone boat in the vast ocean, about to sink in an instant. The power of the demon's sealing curse in the air could not compete with the huge sword will at all, and was instantly drowned. Arg! The endless sword will descended. Immediately after, tragic screams resounded in the air. The figures of the four ghosts of the Hades were completely drowned. In the void, the mighty power rolled over. The power of the demon's sealing curse that was swallowed by the endless sword was directly turned into pure Yuanli and was directly absorbed by Niet Tion. Niet Tion immediately felt the Yuanli in his body skyrocketing. The endless spiritual power of heaven and earth surged in the 9 dragon veins, becoming nourishment for the dragon veins. After a while, everything in the void returned to peace. The figures of the four ghosts of the Hades had completely disappeared, leaving no bones behind. The 4 chains of the god of death floated in the air. There were still runes of the demon's sealing curse on them, but they had already become dim. The power of the demon's sealing curse had been completely swallowed by Niet Tion. I have broken through. Niet Tion stood in the same place, unharmed. A look of joy flashed across his face, and he could not hide his excitement. After absorbing the power of the demon's sealing curse on the 4 chains of the god of death, Niet Tion's strength had actually risen from the 2nd tier of the divine wheel to the 3rd tier. The power of Thunderbolt had an absolute restraining effect on the demon's sealing curse. Otherwise, Niet Tion would not have been able to kill the 4 ghosts of the Hades so easily and even swallowed the demon's sealing curse. The power of the Thunderbolt sword will is indeed powerful. Niet Tion muttered and smiled. He was very satisfied with the first battle with the Thunderbolt sword will. However, the next moment, he suddenly felt a deep aura appear. It was like a ghost, silent and ghostly. He frowned and suddenly turned around. He shouted coldly, "Who is it? Niet Tion, you are indeed not simple. It is not wrong for the 4 ghosts of the Hades to die in your hands." A gloomy voice sounded. A ghostly figure floated in the air. One could only vaguely see that it was a human figure. "It's you." Niet Tion's pupils suddenly shrank, and he was slightly moved. Chapter 639. Niet Tion's pupils shrank slightly as he looked at the vague, humanoid figure that had suddenly appeared in front of him. He couldn't help but tremble violently. Although he couldn't see the face of the person in front of him clearly, he was very familiar with his aura. It was the strong cultivator who had been secretly protecting Yu Tianjin. Previously, when Meng Fanshun had killed Yu Tianjin, this person had been forced to act. At that time, Niet Tion had memorized the other party's aura. However, he hadn't expected that this guy would appear to snatch the 5-poison blood infant. It seemed that Yu Gue wasn't very confident in the strength of the 4 ghosts of hell, so he had also sent this person. This guy had once withstood an all-out attack from Meng Fanshun. At that time, Meng Fanshun was still a warrior of the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. From this, it could be seen that this person's strength was at least at the 8th or 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. Thinking of this, Niet Tion became even more cautious. He stared closely at the other party and didn't dare to relax at all. "Niet Tion, I have to admit that you are very strong. It was a wise decision for Ghost King to send me over to take a look. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to take the 5-poison blood infant back." In the dark night, the blurry black figure spoke. Clouds of black gas filled the air, and the air was filled with an eerie aura. The black figure trembled in the air as if it didn't have a physical body, giving off a very strange feeling. "Do you think that you can take the 5-poison blood infant away just because you're here?" Niet Tion's figure moved slightly, and a disdainful light shot out from his eyes. His aura gathered all over his body, and he was like an arrow on a bow, ready to explode with terrifying power at any time. The black figure laughed coldly. In the empty night sky, it was even more eerie and cold. Several clouds of black gas slowly gathered in the air, slowly forming a physical body. It was a skinny old man. Although there was some color in his face, he wasn't much better than the four corpses from before. Nietian, I'm afraid you still don't know who I am, right? The old man's body shook a little, and the eerie aura in the air thickened. He smiled lightly and said, "There's no harm in telling you. My name is Yumi Xian, and I am one of the Yu brothers under the Ghost King of Hell. It is your honor to die by my hands." Yumi Xian? Hades' Ghost King? Nietian was stunned for a moment. Then he smirked and mocked. "You're obviously a human, but you want to take the name of a demon. Shameless." He guessed that the Nether Ghost King that Yumi Xian spoke of was Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion's Pavilion Master, Nether Ghost. It was just that he did not expect a small Ling Xian Heavenly Pavilion to have so many experts. The four Netherworld ghosts from before were just small fries. At least compared to Yumi Xian, they were not worth mentioning. Yumi Xian was one of the Yu Ming elders, so there was at least one other person in Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion who had the same strength and status as him. Just based on these people, the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion strength was already not beneath the Alchemist Guild. Humph. Miyu Xian laughed sinisterly and said, "Nietian, your talent far exceeds my expectations. Since I has appeared today, you are destined to die here." Yumi Xian was deeply afraid of Nietian's talent. The first time he met Nietian was in the Square restaurant. At that time, Nietian and Yu Tianjin had a conflict. At that time, Nietian was only in the 6th tier of the primordial spirit realm. Now, in less than a month, Nietian's strength had reached the 3rd tier of the divine wheel. Such a speed was astonishing. Yumi Xian had seen countless genius warriors, but compared to Nietian, these people were like fireflies compared to the moon. If a person like Nietian were to grow up, he would definitely be terrifying. Although Yumi Xian was here today to take the 5-poison blood infant, if he could kill Nietian along the way, he would be more than happy. One arrogant tone, Nietian's eyes flashed across his opponent. There was no fear in his eyes. Countless people had wanted to kill him, but in the end, they were all killed. Yumi Xian was the most terrifying opponent that Nietian had encountered, but he was no exception. "You are not afraid?" Sensing the determination in Nietian's eyes, Yumi Xian was slightly surprised. Then, he sneered, "Someone like you would not be afraid of death. It seems that I have underestimated you. You will pay the price for underestimating me." At this moment, Nietian's eyes narrowed. His whole body released a cold, killing intent. A terrifying sword will bloomed. It was sharp, mighty, and overbearing. The sword radiance in the sky shone brightly. The terrifying sword will spread out. The invisible space of the divine wheel opened, and a vigorous force suddenly pressed down. Nietian slashed down with his sword. His entire body merged with the sword will. The power that suddenly erupted was incomparably terrifying. Seeing Nietian suddenly attack, Yumi Xian sneered hoarsely and shouted, "You think you can hurt me? Childish." Nietian's aura was very strong. His swordsmanship had reached the level of sword force. The space of the divine wheel and the sword were perfectly integrated. It was enough to make a warrior in the 5th tier of the divine wheel fearful. Unfortunately, Yumi Xian was in the 8th tier of the divine wheel. In his eyes, Nietian's space of the divine wheel was like a child's play. It was not worth mentioning at all. After saying childish, Yumi Xian raised his arm. It was a simple action, but when placed on him, it felt as heavy as a mountain. "Die!" With an angry roar, Yumi Xian slapped out with his palm. An earth-shattering aura suddenly erupted. A vast and mighty force descended, and it actually had the spirit to destroy everything. Nietian's attack was blocked. In the next moment, it was directly drowned. A powerful wave of air pressed down, forcing him to retreat. His body was pushed back dozens of meters before he could stabilize himself. So powerful, his face was pale. Nietian's lips twitched. However, his eyes were fearless. Instead, they became even more determined. He had only used this sword to test Yu Mi-Xian's strength. He was in the 8th tier of the Divine Wheel. Such strength would be devastating to any warrior in the 3rd tier of the Divine Wheel. But against Nie Tian, he could definitely fight. If Yu Mi-Xian was at the peak of the Divine Wheel, perhaps Nie Tian would be afraid. However, the 8th tier of the Divine Wheel was not enough to frighten him. Although the difference between the 8th tier of the Divine Wheel and the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel was only 1 tier, the difference was like heaven and earth. The 3,000 small worlds were the lower planes. There were plane prohibitions. The stronger one was, the stronger the plane prohibitions they would feel. Any warrior who reached the peak of the Divine Wheel meant that their talent was the best in the 3,000 small worlds. The reason why they could not break through to the heavenly evolution realm was that the plane prohibitions were difficult to break. For example, the warriors of the middle planes, the Sumer world, and the upper planes, the heaven realm and the divine realm, were not necessarily more talented than the warriors of the lower planes. It was just that the place where they were born determined their martial arts achievements to be higher. If geniuses like Ryu, Zhun Su, and Tang 13 were allowed to cultivate in the divine realm and the heaven realm, they would definitely reach the celestial emperor realm. And if they could not leave the 3,000 small worlds, then the limit of their lives would be the peak of the divine wheel. Yu Mi-Xian's strength was in the 8th tier of the divine wheel. This meant that he was not the top warrior of the 3,000 small worlds. At least, he was much weaker than Tang Hao and the others. Chapter 640. Are you surprised? Nie Tian smiled playfully and stepped forward. His aura skyrocketed in an instant. Sword light flashed, and the space of the divine wheel revolved around him. A sharp sword will bloomed in the air. Murderous intent flashed in Yu Mi-Xian's eyes. He had to admit that he had underestimated Nie Tian. He had thought that even if he could not kill Yi Futian on the spot, he would at least be severely injured. But who would have thought that Nie Tian would be unharmed? He was standing on the spot, and his aura had even grown stronger. All of this was too strange. At this moment, Yu Mi-Xian was even more determined to kill Yi Futian. He even thought that killing Nie Tian was more important than obtaining the 5 poison blood infant. If Nie Tian found out about Yu Tianjin's true identity, the latter would be in danger. Yu Tianjin's talent and strength were both very strong, but compared to Nie Tian, he was still too weak. What Yu Mi-Xian did not know was that Nie Tian already knew about Yu Tianjin's identity and had already decided to kill him. Nie Tian, you must die today. Yu Mi-Xian's throat was hoarse, and he gave off an eerie aura. His body released a layer of black fog that was extremely strange. It condensed into a skeletal face in the air that was like an abyss. It opened its jet-black mouth, wanting to devour everything. You've said too much. Nie Tianling stepped forward and stood in the air. The power of heaven and earth changed. He was like a huge black hole that began to absorb the spiritual power of heaven and earth. Yu Mi-Xian was very strong. 5th-rank star souls could not hurt him at all. This person was worthy of Nie Tian using the 3 seals of the god of war. Under normal circumstances, Nie Tian would not use the 3 seals of the god of war because its power was too shocking and it would be a great burden on him. He could only use it cautiously. At this moment, he had the strength of a 3rd-rank divine wheel. Even without using the power of heaven and earth, he could still use the 3 seals of the god of war to a certain extent. However, he was worried that Yu Mi-Xian was too strong, so he decided to use the power of heaven and earth to kill him in one blow. Sensing that the momentum of the world around him had changed and was tilting towards Nie Tian, the entire space was being stretched and distorted. Yu Mi-Xian's eyes suddenly narrowed, faintly feeling that something bad was about to happen. Kid, no matter what martial skill you use, it won't be able to make up for the difference in strength between us. If you want to defeat me, do it in your next life. Yu Mi-Xian calmed down and a vicious voice came out. Black gas filled his body, like dark clouds surging in the void. Suddenly, the surrounding air became damp, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. The black energy wreaked havoc, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Terrifying scenes flickered within, as if there were tens of thousands of people suffering the cruelest torture. Nietion's ears were filled with shrill screams, as if there were countless people suffering in front of him. Illusion. His heart trembled, and a fierce sword will burst out. His ears and eyes suddenly became quiet. The black gas was very strange. It could actually cause people to hallucinate. The ghost chi of the netherworld is condensed from the souls of thousands of martial artists. It is your honor to die under this ghost chi. Yumi Xian's voice sounded. It was eerie and harsh, filled with killing intent. He slowly raised his palm, and the ghost chi in the void became thicker and thicker. 3 hideous ghost faces appeared in the air, each one filled with bloody, killing intent. Nietion, prepare to die. If you die under the ghost chi of the netherworld, I guarantee that you won't be able to rest in peace. Ha ha! A cold and gloomy roar sounded, and the 3 ghost faces in the void spat out 3 ghost chi. The scene was extremely strange and chilling. Is that so? Nietion stood in the air without fear. He even closed his eyes at this moment, not paying attention to anything around him. He used his divine sense and his soul to feel the power of heaven and earth around him, merging the heaven and earth spiritual energy into his body. Only then would he be able to explode with even more power. The power of heaven and earth was gathering, and waves of heaven and earth spiritual energy roared and roared, like a stream flowing into the sea, and was madly absorbed by Nietion. The sword will around Nietion's body spread, and his aura rose wildly. Endless killing intent and terrifying fighting intent spread out with him as the center. Feeling that Nietion's aura was becoming more and more terrifying, Yumi Xian's eyes trembled, and the 3 ghost chi of the netherworld behind him began to gather. In the blink of an eye, they were almost solid. The monstrous bloody aura continued to roll, as if it would never stop. It's over. Yumi Xian's final voice sounded. There is no more mockery, but the coldest sentence, sounding the death knell for Nietion. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The ghost chi of the netherworld moved, and the whistling sound of the air was heard. The 3 ghosts bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they fiercely pounced forward. The ghost chi of the netherworld froze the surrounding space, and the power of heaven and earth suddenly stopped. Almost at the same time, Nietion's figure also moved. His eyes suddenly opened, and Nietion formed a seal with his hands. An invisible force was released, and the frozen space began to move again. Soul-severing heavenly seal, open. A mighty and calm voice sounded in the void. Following the mighty voice, the endless power of heaven and earth surged out like a river bursting through a dam. Boom, boom, boom. Countless rays of golden light fell from the void, turning into a terrifying invisible force that blasted towards Yumi Xian. The soul-severing heavenly seal destroyed all evil, especially against evil Yuan Qi like the ghost Qi of the netherworld. It had the absolute power to suppress it. The 3 ghost Qi of the netherworld sensed danger and let out mournful cries. They did not dare to move forward, and their pitch-black eyes widened in fear. Oh no! Yumi Xian was completely shocked when he saw this scene. The fearless ghost Qi of the netherworld actually revealed expressions of fear under the golden light. This was too ridiculous. Who was Nietion? Why did he possess such a terrifying martial skill? There was no time to think. Yumi Xian made up his mind and decisively gave up on the ghost Qi of the netherworld and chose to escape. If the ghost Qi of the netherworld saw that Yumi Xian, one of the 2 elders of the netherworld, was running away in fear, it would definitely vomit blood. However, it was too late. Just as Yumi Xian was about to escape, countless rays of golden light fell. The ghost Qi of the netherworld was directly blasted into ashes and completely collapsed. Yumi Xian felt the space around him thicken, and he felt as if he could not breathe. At the critical moment, he suddenly turned around and struck out with his palm in an attempt to make a final struggle. At this moment, a violent saber essence whistled through the air, and it was extremely swift and fierce. Boom! The saber essence bloomed, and an incomparably terrifying saber shadow appeared, as if it was going to split the heavens and earth. Chapter 641. In the void, the terrifying shadow of the saber whizzed past, extremely swift and fierce. Yumi Xian did not have time to react, and his body was cut in half. Blood splattered everywhere, and the corpse turned into two balls of netherworld ghost chi. They fused together and tried to escape. Right at this moment, countless rays of golden light descended. The soul-severing heavenly seal descended with a loud rumble. The netherworld ghost chi was instantly drowned and shattered. Countless phantoms of malicious spirits appeared in the space, and shrill and ear-piercing screams rose and fell incessantly. After a long time, the space returned to calm once more, but the ground was a complete mess with thousands of ravines. Nietian's figure fell from the sky. His face was slightly pale. He turned around and looked at the figure not far away. He smiled faintly and said, "Elder Yi." The saber intent just now was released by Elder Yi. At the crucial moment, it completely cut off Yumi Xian's escape route. "Mr. Nye, are you okay?" Elder Yi saw Niet Tian's pale face and stepped forward and asked anxiously. He and Xiushan were in the mansion just now. Although they saw the fierce battle in the sky, they did not dare to leave the small courtyard. After all, Niet Tian had instructed the two of them to guard that place and not allow anyone to approach. Just now, Elder Yi saw the fierce battle between Niet Tian and Yumi Xian. He could not help but rush over. Fortunately, in the end, Niet Tian won the clash of ultimate moves. Even if Elder Yi did not come, Niet Tian could still defeat Yumi Xian. However, it was not certain if he could kill Yumi Xian. "I'm fine." Niet Tian smiled faintly. He spread out his divine sense to check if there was anyone hiding in the surroundings. At this moment, a figure came from the sky and landed directly in front of Niet Tian and Elder Yi. "Who are you?" Niet Tian's eyes widened when he saw the man's face. Then he suddenly thought of something, laughed, and asked, "Did you see the battle just now?" "Yes." The mask on Raindrop's face twitched slightly. His reaction was a little intense, as if he wanted to say something, but he swallowed it back down. The corner of Niet Tian's mouth twitched. A glint flashed in his eyes as he said, "Are you also here for the 5-poison blood infant?" Clearly, it was not a coincidence that Serene appeared outside the Gu residence. Furthermore, he had said that he and Netherghost were collaborators, so it wasn't strange for him to know about this. "Yes." Rain didn't try to hide anything and nodded. "Dream on." Elder Ye's face sank after hearing Ruo Yu admitting it. He let out a furious roar and unleashed his saber intent. Elder Yi, seeing this, Niet Tian waved his hand to stop him and said, "You go back first. He is not an enemy." Elder Yi looked at Niet Tian, and the latter smiled confidently, reassuring him. Elder Yi gave Ruo Yu a cold look before turning to leave. "Ruo Yu, Elder Yi is leaving. If you have anything to say, just say it." Niet Tian could tell that Ruo Yu wanted to say something. However, because of Elder Ye's presence, she felt apprehensive. "Let's go somewhere else," Ruo Yu said coldly. Niet Tian frowned, but did not move. He worried that this might be Ruo Yu's ploy to lure him away. If Xiao Chun left, the Lingxian Heaven Pavilion would send more people. Then, the 5-poison blood infant would be in danger. "Don't worry. The Lingxian Heaven Pavilion will not send anyone," Ruo Yu said indifferently when she saw what Niet Tian was thinking. "I believe you." Niet Tian's lips curled up as he said, "Let's go then." Two figures soared into the sky and vanished into the night. Soon, the two arrived at a vast, desolate land. Niet Tian looked around. It was hard to imagine that there would be such a place in Sumi's spirit capital, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. "Speak," Niet Tian said bluntly. Ruo Yu had always been a mystery. He was the only person that Niet Tian could not see through. Ruo Yu's back was facing Niet Tian. He suddenly raised his hand and took off his mask. He slowly turned around, revealing a strange face. Half of this face was extremely beautiful, while the other half was full holes. If one only looked at the beautiful half, this man could be said to be devastatingly beautiful. But if one looked at the other half, they would only think of him as a ghost. Nyetian saw that the terrifying half of Ruo Yu's face seemed to be filled with killing intent. It was actually the aura of some kind of curse. Ruo Yu's mouth twitched. He put on the mask and said in a calm voice, "You already know who I am. You are Rui Qinyu's brother, right?" Nyetian asked with a burning gaze. "Yes." Ruo Yu nodded slightly. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he said, "You must be wondering why all the people from the bloody slaughter palace are dead. Why am I still alive? It used to be strange, but it's not strange anymore." Nyetian's eyes trembled as he said, "All the people from the bloody slaughter palace must have been hit by some kind of curse. That's why they were killed overnight. You were also hit by this curse, but you have the nine-yang body, so you have the power to restrain the curse. That's why you are still alive, right?" Nyetian did find it strange before. Elderly clearly said that all the people from the bloody slaughter palace were killed, so why was Ruo Yu still alive? But when he looked at Ruo Yu's face, he immediately understood that he had been hit by some kind of terrifying curse, which was why he had turned into a half-human, half-ghost. The curse was so terrifying that even Nyetian had never seen it before. Ruo Yu had the nine-yang body, so her bloodline power was 10 times stronger than an ordinary person's, but she still couldn't get rid of the curse's power. It was obvious that the curse was very terrifying. The people from the bloody slaughter palace must have been hit by the curse and died. However, those people did not expect that true Cass Rain would actually survive. Ruo Yu was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Nyetian to be so smart that he could guess so many things just by looking at his face. He nodded and his eyes suddenly became firm. He said, "I will definitely take revenge for the bloody slaughter palace, but I don't want Xinyu to be involved. However, I don't want Chiba to get involved. You're the only one who can persuade her. I hope you can help me persuade her to give up on taking revenge. In this life, I will settle this hatred alone. I don't want to see Qinya living in hatred. She is my only family in this world and the only person I care about. I just want her to be an ordinary person. I don't want anything else." Nyetian was slightly moved when he heard Ruo Yu's words. When the bloody slaughter palace was destroyed, Ruo Yu was only 4 or 5 years old. What kind of feeling would it be for a child at such a young age to see all of his relatives die in front of him with his own eyes? A 4 or 5-year-old child with a hatred that could never be erased, and he was hit by a curse. He really didn't know how Ruo Yu survived all these years. He didn't want Rui Qinya to fall into hatred, so he wanted to shoulder everything alone. But was it possible? Rui Qinya looked cold, but her heart was burning. Would she let her brother face such a powerful enemy alone? If Rui Qinya could be persuaded, she wouldn't have left Heaven Luo City in the first place. Ruo Yu's thoughts were just wishful thinking. Chapter 642. Ruo Yu wanted to use his own strength to take revenge, but he did not have the chance to do so. When he took off his mask, Nyetian had already sensed that the cursed seal on his body had become violent and difficult to suppress. If he did not receive treatment soon, he would not be able to resist the cursed seal's power, even if he had the nine-yang body. Ruo Yu's eyes trembled when he heard Nyetian's words. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "You saw through it." His bitter laughter contained a strong sense of helplessness, but at the same time, it also contained a bit of indifference. Ruo Yu was not afraid of death, but he was unwilling to die without taking revenge. There were too many regrets. If he died, the person he was most worried about was his only sister, Rui Qinya. If Rui Qinya could not let go of her hatred, she would not be happy in this life. This was what Ryu did not want to see the most, and it was also what he could not bear. Nyetian nodded his head and said seriously, "Previously, in the Rising Dragon Killing Array in the Chaotic Abyss, you used the nine-yang blood chi to forcefully fuse with Rui Qinyu's blood-devouring power. The blood-devouring power weakened your nine-yang body, so the cursed seal on your body can no longer be suppressed, right?" The nine yang body was a heaven and earth spiritual body with extreme yang power. It was very effective against curse seals. But now, Nietian could clearly feel that the nine yang blood chi in Ruoyu's body had weakened a lot. It should be related to the time when he helped Rui Qinyu endure the blood-devouring power. Even a nine yang body could not withstand the blood-devouring power produced by the 10 innate special pupils, 9 colored pupils. Ruo Rain's pupils instantly shrank, as she couldn't believe that Nietian had even guessed this. The cursed seal in his body was called the blood-severing seal. All the people from the Bloody Slaughter Palace had died under the blood-severing seal. The blood-severing seal could form a blood-severing whirlpool inside a martial artist's body, devouring their blood chi. For ordinary martial artists, no matter how strong they were, once they were hit by the blood-severing seal, they wouldn't even be able to withstand the first blood-severing whirlpool and would die. True Case Rain had the nine yang body, so his blood chi was 10 times stronger than a normal martial artist's, so he did not die immediately. However, the horror of the blood-severing seal was not as simple as cutting apart the blood vortex. Even if the person struck by the seal did not die immediately, the seal would not disappear. Instead, it would grow stronger as the martial artist's strength increased. Ruo Yuzhen, who had carried the severing blood mark on his body for more than 20 years. Currently, there were already 6 severing blood whirlpools in his body. If not for his nine yang body, he would have died from the blood whirlpool. The severing blood seal was growing, but True Case Rain's nine yang body was also growing. If there were no accidents, the nine yang body would allow him to endure 12 severing blood whirlpools at the same time. He would be able to live to at least 50 years old. However, last time in the primal chaos abyss, Rui Qinyu's blood-devouring power had greatly weakened his nine yang body. For nearly a year, True Case Rain had endured the torture of the severing blood seal. It was a life worse than death. Just over a month ago, he suddenly felt that he could no longer suppress the severing blood seal. Therefore, he hastened his revenge plan. But now, it seemed that no matter how much he hastened it, it was useless. In this lifetime, he was destined to be unable to take revenge. This kind of pain was absolutely devastating to a person who lived for revenge. How much time do you have? Nietian's expression slightly froze as he asked in a heavy voice. True Case Rain's mask twitched. A trace of pain flashed in his eyes as he said, "At least half a month, at most a month." Nietian frowned. The situation was similar to what he had expected. "I want to know, what is your revenge plan?" Nietian did not waste any more time and directly asked. True Case Rain thought for a moment and said, "Do you know where I grew up?" Nietian was stunned for a moment. He looked at True Case Rain and shook his head slightly. No matter where True Case Rain grew up, he must have had a hard time all these years. True Case Rain sighed softly. He seemed to be recalling many things as his body trembled slightly. After a moment, he calmed down and said, "I grew up in the land of blood massacre. My teacher was one of the enemies who destroyed the Bloody Massacre Palace. He protected my life and allowed me to work for them." True Case Rain closed his eyes as he said this. He had become the disciple of his enemy and lived with them every day. However, he was unable to take revenge. This kind of feeling was definitely not good. True Case Rain opened his eyes again. He was much calmer now and continued. "My teacher and the mysterious force behind him seem to be under some kind of restriction. They are unable to leave the land of blood massacre. That's why they need people like me to help them leave the land of blood massacre and do some things that they cannot do. Apart from me, the Linxian Pavilion is also an organization that works for the land of blood massacre." Hearing this, Nietian could not help but frown. He did not expect the land of blood massacre to be behind the Linxian Pavilion. He had seen what True Case Rain said with his own eyes. When Nietian and Rui Qinyu left the land of blood massacre, they were chased by the people of the land of blood massacre. He still remembered that the leader of the land of blood massacre was called Monarch. She was stronger than elderly. However, when Nietian and the others escaped from the land of blood massacre, Monarch did not dare to chase after them. It was as if she was afraid of something and did not dare to leave the land of blood massacre. This was completely consistent with what True Case Rain had said. As for the Lin Xian Pavilion, it was actually an organization that belonged to the Land of Blood Massacre. This surprised Nie Tian. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was not strange. Gu Yi had said that the rise of the Lin Xian Pavilion had only happened in the past 10 years. For such a large force to rise in such a short period of time, it would be very difficult to do so without the support of a larger force. Moreover, Wan Churong, Yumi Xian, and the four nether ghosts all belong to the Yin category. They must have cultivated a sinister cultivation technique. There were not many such cultivation techniques in the 3,000 small worlds. Nie Tian had previously suspected that the mysterious force of the Land of Blood Massacre was not a force from the 3,000 small worlds, but a force from the Sumeru world. Now, it seemed that he was even more certain of his guess. To be able to cultivate a force like the Lin Xian Pavilion in such a short period of time, the Land of Blood Massacre must have come from the upper world. At this time, Nie Tian also understood other things. Why did Ryu and Nether Ghost know each other? Why was she so familiar with the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion? So they were working for the Land of Blood Massacre. Nie Tian frowned and said, "The Lin Xian Pavilion seems to be planning something big. Do you know what Wilgue is planning?" True Case Rain shook her head and said, "This time, I came out to help Wilgue. As for what his real goal is, I do not know." Chapter 643. When Ruo Zhan heard Nie Tian's words, his eyes trembled again. The latter's intelligence far exceeded his expectations. Just from a few words and some small details, he could see through all his plans. Nie Tian's shrewdness was unfathomable. And Ruo Zhan nodded and said, "In the Land of Blood Massacre, there is a blood altar. The people of the Land of Blood Massacre will leave their blood in the altar. This way, even if they die, they could be reborn in the blood altar. If they do not leave the Land of Blood Massacre, it is equivalent to having an immortal body. No one can kill them. This is why the four great families do not dare to provoke the Land of Blood Massacre. If they die outside the Land of Blood Massacre, the blood altar will not have any effect. That way, they will truly die. An altar with the power of rebirth?" Nie Tian's face froze, extremely shocked. He immediately transmitted to Corpse Demon Lord and asked, "Corpse Demon Lord, do you know of such an altar?" Corpse Demon Lord was equally shocked and replied, "Master, I have seen records of it in the ancient books of the demon race, but I have never seen it. I always thought it was just a legend. I did not expect it to be true. Bringing the dead back to life, even a 9th-level medicinal herb could not do it. A small altar could bring so many people back to life. Such a thing, Nie Tian did not believe. Perhaps Ruo Zhan had only heard of it and had never seen it. In short, Nie Tian did not believe that an altar could have the power to reverse life and death. Ruo Zhan shook his head, his eyes filled with despair. He smiled bitterly and said, "Originally, I thought that I had a chance to take revenge. As long as I can force them out of the Land of Blood Massacre, I can kill them. Unfortunately, I do not have the time now. I hate it." For the first time, Ruo Zhan became agitated and revealed a manic mood. Nie Tian quietly stood where he was and looked at him indifferently, not saying a word. "Why did you participate in the Meru martial meet?" After a while, when Ruo Zhan calmed down, Nie Tian suddenly asked. Ruo Zhan's expression became much calmer. He did not hide anything and said, "Yugui wants me to get the Martial Gatherings champion. He needs that map." Vital Qi geographical vein map? Nie Tian was slightly taken aback, but he did not continue to ask. Instead, he made a mental note of this. "I want to see your face again, can I?" After thinking for a while, Nie Tian said, "Maybe I can help you suppress the splitting blood seal." Rain's eyes flickered, and a fiery light flashed in them. It was like a drowning man grasping at the last life-saving straw. He wasn't afraid of death. He was just unwilling to die without getting his revenge. Without much hesitation, Rain took off her mask and revealed her terrifying face. Nie Tian opened his palm, and a sword intent surged out. It turned into a beam of light and circled Raincloud's face, absorbing some of the curse mark's energy before vanishing. Then, he said, I need to study the power of the severing blood mark. After the Meru martial gathering ends, you can come to the Gu residence to look for me. Xiao Chen's calm voice showed great confidence. Rain Cloud's gaze froze. When he felt the determination in Nie Tian's eyes, hope rekindled in his nearly despairing heart. He asked, "Do you really have a way to suppress the severing blood seal? It should not be a problem." Nie Tian smiled faintly, appearing strangely confident. Suddenly, Nie Tian thought of something. He asked, "Do you still want to take the 5 poison blood infant back?" Rain Cloud narrowed her eyes. Then, she actually laughed and said, "Will you let me take it?" "Come with me," Nie Tian said. Then his figure flashed, and he flew up. Rain followed closely behind him. Soon, the two arrived at the Gu residence. "Mr. Nie," Elder Yi shouted excitedly when he saw Nie Tian return. We saw that Rain Cloud was there as well. He could not help feeling stunned. He asked, "Why is he here as well?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and gestured for Elder Yi to withdraw his hostility. Then he said, "He wants to take a look at the 5 poison blood infant. Otherwise, he will feel uneasy." After saying that, Nie Tian led the others into the room. Gu Yi paced around uneasily in the room, clearly frustrated. When he saw Nie Tian appear, he smiled joyfully and asked, "Little brother Nie, are you all right now?" Gu Yi had calmed down after hearing the intense sounds of battle. However, the calmer he was, the more flustered he felt. When he saw Nie Tian return, he finally relaxed. Nie Tian nodded and smiled. Then he asked, "Where is that little fellow?" "Asleep." Gu Yi chuckled and walked over to the bed. Everyone went forward to take a look. The 5 poison blood infant was indeed asleep. It was drooling all over the blanket, sleeping soundly. "You saw it. This is the 5 poison blood infant." Nie Tian nodded slightly and sent a voice projection to Rain Cloud. Rain Cloud's face was filled with shock. He was speechless for a long time. The infant in front of him was no different from a normal infant. It was just that its ears were slightly pointy and it had a faint aura of the 5 poison blood infant. It was completely different from the legendary 5 poison blood infant. Nie Tian brought Rain Cloud out of the room. Then he said, "I have already cured the 5 poison blood infant. Even if you bring it back now, it will be useless." "You have cured it?" Rain Cloud's eyes trembled. He immediately understood that Nie Tian had brought him to see the 5 poison blood infant to reassure him. Since Nie Tian could cure the 5 poison blood infant, he must have a way to help him suppress the severing blood seal. At this time, the sky was about to brighten. Rain Cloud did not stay any longer and left immediately. Nie Tian and the others also returned to their respective rooms to rest and prepare for the upcoming Shumi martial meet. On the second day, Nie Tian had more or less adjusted his condition. He went to the Shumi martial arena with Qiu Shan and the others. The Shumi martial arena was packed with people, and the sky was in an uproar. After the first day of fighting, there were only around 1,000 people left participating in the martial competition. Nie Tian and the others arrived at the martial arena and lined up to start the competition. Regarding the early stages of the competition, Nie Tian did not care much about it. His battles were all very easy. Most people directly admitted defeat. Very few people, even if they went up to the martial arena, were defeated by Nie Tian in a single move. After the competition ended, Nie Tian came to the surroundings of the martial arena to see if there were any matches that were worthy of an official's attention. At this time, a figure appeared on the martial arena. The surrounding crowd immediately became restless and started discussing. "It's MOU, one of the 3 great evildoers of the Shumi spirit capital. I wonder who his opponent will be this time." The opponents that young Master MOU met before were all too weak. They were not worth mentioning at all. I hope that there will be a decent opponent this time. That's right. Young Master MOU is the champion of this martial meet. I really want to see how strong he is. I hope it won't be an opponent that will admit defeat. Nie Tian also looked over at this time. MOU stood on the martial arena, his eyes arrogant. He released a powerful aura, giving people a sense of oppression. MOU. In the next moment, a beautiful figure appeared. A clear voice came from the air. It was abnormally familiar. The beautiful figure landed. Nietion's gaze suddenly trembled. He involuntarily shouted out her name. Mo Rushi. Chapter 644. Seeing that the person opposite Mo was Mo Rushi, Nietion's heart skipped a beat, and his eyes trembled slightly. Mo Rushi was already at the first tier of the spirit wheel at this time. Judging from her age, her talent was no less than Mo's. Moreover, her original spirit was the ninth heaven divine phoenix. Coupled with the integration of the phoenix soul, her real combat power was enough to compete with Mou. However, Nietion was still very worried about her. Mo Rushi was strong, but she lacked combat experience. Moreover, she was kind-hearted. Facing Mou, even if there was hatred in her heart, it would be impossible for her to kill him. On the other hand, Mou hated Mo Rushi to the bone. At this time, he had the opportunity to fight with the latter, and he would spare no effort to kill the other party. When warriors fought, whether they had the intention to kill or not was very crucial and could even determine the outcome. The appearance of Mou and Mo Rushi immediately attracted everyone's attention. Some people recognized Mo Rushi's identity and began to discuss. That red-haired woman is a member of the Mo family. She inherited the Phoenix soul in the Phoenix stone. I heard that her talent is even more terrifying than young Master Mou's. I wonder if it's true? It's true, and she has already left the Mo family. Lord Nietion redeemed her with a heaven-level martial art manual and a 9th-tier emperor weapon. Lord Mo Zhaojing promised in front of many people that Mo Rushi will no longer have anything to do with her family in the future. She is a member of the Mo family's branch. Although she is not a member of the Mo family, she is still a member of the Mo family. She inherited the Phoenix soul, but was forced to leave the Mo family. Lord Mo Zhaojing's move is really disgraceful. Be careful what you say. If you are heard by the Mo family, you won't be able to survive even if you have 10 lives. Mou's face became even more gloomy as he listened to all of this. Since the moment Mo Rushi entered the Mo family, he had not regarded the latter as an opponent. However, who would have thought that such a person, whom he did not want to look directly at, would actually trigger the Phoenix cry in the 9th heaven and obtain the inheritance of the Phoenix soul? The day when Mo Rushi triggered the Phoenix cry in the 9th heaven was the darkest day of Mou's life. At this time, thinking about it still made him feel depressed. The inheritance of the Phoenix was something that originally belonged to him. How could he allow others to encroach upon it? Mo Rushi's figure gracefully descended like a goddess from the 9th heaven. Her fiery red hair fluttered slightly, and there was a faint warmth in the air. Mou stared at Mo Rushi. His eyes were like 2 steel needles, releasing a cold and poisonous intent. Mo Rushi also looked at him, but her eyes were filled with anger and some unwillingness. She hated Mou, but it was far from the point where she wanted the other party to die. She just wanted to prove to everyone that her talent was not worse than Mou's, nothing more. Mo Rushi, you took something that doesn't belong to you. Today, it's time for you to pay the price. Suddenly, Mou spoke in a gloomy and cold voice, and the coldness in his eyes was piercingly cold and murderous, almost condensed into a substance, causing others to feel suffocated. Something that doesn't belong to me? The corners of Mo Rushi's gentle lips twitched as she faintly said, "Are you talking about the Phoenix soul?" "Yes." Mou roared, almost roaring. "The soul of the Phoenix belongs to the Mo family. It belongs to me. You stole my thing, so you have to pay the price." Stole? Mo Rushi was slightly stunned. She did not expect Mou to use this word. The soul of the Phoenix was inherited from ancient times, and it belonged to those who were fated. Even if the Mo family occupied the Phoenix Peak, the Phoenix soul should be open to all the children of the Mo family. Whoever had the ability and the highest talent could obtain the Phoenix soul. But Mo regarded the Phoenix soul as his own, which was simply pestering endlessly. "Yes, you are the one who stole the Phoenix soul." Mou's anger soared to the sky, and he roared wildly. "Mo Rushi, who do you think you are? You're just a disciple of a branch of the Mo family. If it were not for the Mo family pitying you, you would not even have the qualification to enter the Sumi spiritual capital. But you? Not only did you not want to return the favor, but you also stole the Phoenix soul, betrayed the Mo family, and helped the enemy of the Mo family to deal with the Mo family. Today I will clean up the Mo family. These extremely shameless words fell into Mo Rushi's ears, stirring up a great disturbance in her heart. Previously, Nyetian had told her that if she continued to stay in the Mo family, with Mo's shamelessness, he would certainly deprive her of the Phoenix soul. At that time, she still had doubts about Nyetian's words because no matter what, she was still surnamed Mo, and she was a member of the Mo family. But now, she completely believed in Nyetian's words. Fortunately, she left the Mo family with Nyetian that day. Otherwise, she did not know whether she would be dead or alive now. Clean up the Mo family? Mo Rushi's expression stiffened, and her eyes trembled violently. A drop of sparkling and translucent tear swirled in her eyes, stubbornly refusing to fall. She really wanted to ask, what did I do wrong? Didn't I just obtain the Phoenix soul? Was this her fault? First, she was forced to leave the Mo family. Then her father was chased by the people of the Mo family. And now, the number one genius of the Mo family could not wait for her to die and actually wanted to clean up the Mo family. Are these my clansmen? Mo Rushi's eyes flashed with a touch of moisture. She told herself in her heart that after this tear fell, she would no longer have any relationship with the Mo family. Before going on stage, she was still fantasizing in her heart that as long as she defeated Mou and proved her talent to everyone, she would be able to take her father back to the Mo family in a just and honorable manner. But now, she wanted to understand. Such a family, it was better not to return. Mo Rushi. Mou saw that Mo Rushi's eyes were wet and thought that she was afraid. So he called out her name word by word with an arrogant and cold expression. As long as you admit defeat and voluntarily pass on the Phoenix soul to me, the Mo family can accept you. How about it? Mou still did not give up on the Phoenix soul. If Mo Rushi was killed, the Phoenix soul would also disappear. So, unless it was a last resort, Mou would not kill her. He would cripple Mo Rushi, crippling Mo Rushi's yuan meridians, but the Phoenix soul in her body would still be there, and there was still a trace of possibility of separating it. You still want the Phoenix soul? The tears in Mo Rushi's eyes fell, but her eyes became calm, and she no longer held any illusions. The Phoenix soul originally belongs to me. Why don't I want it? Mou asked rhetorically, as if it was a matter of course. Mo Rushi shook her head slightly, then took a step forward, and her whole body released surging yuan energy. Her fiery red hair fluttered in the air, and her tone was cold as she said, "If you want the Phoenix soul, then come and defeat me." As her voice fell, a fiery red halo floated in the air and instantly turned into a blazing flame that surrounded Mo Rushi. At this moment, her whole person seemed to have turned into a phoenix in a raging fire. Chapter 645. There can only be one genius in the Mo family, and that is me, Mou. Mou's cold voice fell, showing his arrogance and overbearing attitude. In the Mo family, he wanted to be the only one, so he would never allow anyone else to overshadow him. And once someone was stronger than him, there was only one end: death. Mou, you talk too much nonsense. Mo Rushi's beautiful eyes became slightly cold, and her tone became low. For the first time, she said something provocative. She was not the kind of person who was very aggressive, but even a rabbit would bite when cornered, let alone a living person. The Mo family's actions and Mou's words had touched Mo Rushi's bottom line, so she had to fight back. Mo Rushi. Mou clenched his teeth and growled resentfully. But when he perceived Mo Rushi's strength, his expression could not help but stiffen, and his face was full of surprise and shock. Mo Rushi was already at the first tier of the spirit wheel. How was this possible? Mou clearly remembered that more than a month ago, before Mo Rushi inherited the Phoenix soul, she was still at the first tier of the giant spirit realm, and he didn't even want to look at her. Even after inheriting the Phoenix soul, Mo Rushi's strength was only at the first tier of the spiritual energy realm. But now, she had actually reached the first tier of the spirit wheel. The speed at which one's strength increased was simply unimaginable. How did Mo Rushi do it? Countless strong questions entangled in Mo's heart, making his resentment more intense, and his eyes surged with a strong killing intent. The stronger Mo Rushi was, the greater Mo's resentment towards her. Tian watched from afar, secretly sweating in his heart, hoping that Mo Rushi would not be lenient when she attacked. Mo did not regard this match as an ordinary fight, but as a life-and-death duel. Above the sky pavilion, the elders of the four great families were also paying attention to this match. Lord Mo Xing, who do you think will win this match? Elder Mo Xiaotian of the Tang family smiled faintly and asked with a playful look. This scene was somewhat similar to the match between Mo Rushi and Tang Sheng yesterday, except that the protagonist of the question had changed from Mo Xing to Mo Xiaotian. Mo Xing's old face turned red. He smiled cold and replied, "Of course it's MOU." Really? The ridicule in the corner of Mo Xiaotian's eyes became even stronger as he said, "The girl standing opposite MOU is called Mo Rushi. She was the person who had triggered the Phoenix cry to the ninth heaven to obtain the inheritance of the Phoenix. Even the Mo family head had not been able to trigger the Phoenix cry to the ninth heaven back then. As for MOU, it was said that he had not even triggered a single Phoenix cry. With this kind of talent, to be called one of the three great monsters of Ling City, it was a bit unworthy of the name. Hee. It was a faint smile, but it was filled with extreme mockery. Lord Mo Xiaotian is right. Mo Rushi's talent is much higher than MOU's. In that case, the three great evildoers of Shumi Spirit Capital should not be MOU, but Miss Mo Rushi. Gu family's elder, Gu Hong, fanned the flames from the side. The genius of the Gu family, Gu Qiulong, did not participate in the Shumi martial meet. He was participating in the alchemist competition, and his goal was to be the champion of the pill competition. The reason why Gu Qiulong was ranked as one of the top 3 monstrous geniuses was not because of his martial arts talent, but because of his alchemy talent. Therefore, belittling MOU did not affect Gu Qiulong's status, so why not? Mo Xing's face was gloomy. He breathed heavily, and his breathing became a little rapid. Everyone, it's useless for us to say anything here. Strength is the greatest authority. The battle between the two of them is about to begin, and whoever wins will have the higher talent, Qiu Wuxi said indifferently when he saw that the situation wasn't right. Kill! At this time, a loud shout came from the martial stage. MOU's figure immediately moved. He shot out a palm, and the terrifying palm force was like a huge net, crazily shrouding over. Mo Rushi felt the pressure on her face. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and the phoenix power around her body quickly condensed, turning into a flame blade in the air, and shot out. The moment the flames swept through the air, the temperature of the space rose a lot. The martial stage seemed to have turned into a huge furnace, and the air appeared to be in a dense state, as if it was being burned by the heat. Mo Rushi had fused with the Phoenix Soul for almost a month. During this time, she had already comprehended the Phoenix Soul, and she was also very skilled in controlling the Phoenix power in her body. She could feel that there was a majestic and vast power surging in her body. That kind of blazing power was like the sun, almost able to annihilate everything. However, she had not yet been able to completely comprehend that power. Boom! There was a violent bang in the air, and the flame blade pierced through the vast palm force, attacking MOU. MOU's eyes trembled violently, feeling that the sudden fiery power was almost burning him. He could not help but scream, and then his whole body surged with Yuan power, and the space of the divine wheel opened. But even so, he was still forced to retreat more than a dozen steps, and the clothes on his body were almost burned, tattered, and he looked extremely embarrassed. In the first confrontation between the two, MOU was unexpectedly defeated. Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Mo Rushi's strength was too strong. She actually defeated MOU in one move, and the latter was defeated so miserably. Did I see it wrong? Is this really the number one genius of the MO family? One of the three great evildoers of Sumi Ling City, young Master MOU? He's too weak. Yes, just now, MOU attacked first, but he was actually beaten to such a state by Mo Rushi. If Miss Rushi attacked first, I guess MOU would already be a corpse. What kind of three great evildoers are they? They are not as good as the three great oddities. It's really shameful. In an instant, the whole audience was in an uproar, and all kinds of voices rang out. When they fell into MOU's ears, it was like a steel needle piercing his heart. Nie Tian looked at the scene on the martial arts arena, and there was not the slightest smile on his face. Instead, he became even more worried. Although Mo Rushi's move was very strong, it was not fatal at all, and MOU, after being completely enraged, would absolutely not have any scruples. He could give up the Phoenix Soul, but he must not lose this battle. Mo Rushi, this is what you asked for. Sure enough, the next moment, MOU's body shook, and his whole body erupted with anger. His eyes were filled with cold, killing intent, and a flame spear appeared in his hand. It was the rank 9 Emperor weapon, Greedy Wolf Snake Flame Spear. MOU did not expect Mo Rushi's strength to be so terrifying. He was 2 levels higher than the latter, but he couldn't even block one move from the latter. The Phoenix Soul was really terrifying, but MOU, also had a trump card, which was the rank 9 Emperor weapon, Greedy Wolf Snake Flame Spear. It turned out that after Mo Zhaojing obtained the Greedy Wolf Snake Flame Spear, he directly gave it to MOU. The Greedy Wolf Snake Flame Spear was a rank 9 Emperor weapon, but it was sealed by Jean de Bayo to the level of a rank 7 spiritual weapon. It was just right in the hands of a Spirit Wheel Realm warrior. With a rank 7 spiritual weapon in hand, MOU even had the confidence to challenge a high-level Spirit Wheel Realm warrior. Chapter 646. Mo Rushi's beautiful eyes flickered. She felt a strong threat from the flaming spear, and her eyes could not help but tremble. Mo Rushi, prepare to die. MOU laughed maniacally, his face showing a ferocious look. He raised his arm, and the Greedy Wolf Snake Flame Spear drew a dazzling flame in the air. The raging flame spread out and actually condensed into a huge wolf head in the air. It opened its huge mouth, and 2 flaming fangs released billowing heat waves as it fiercely pounced towards Mo Rushi. The heat waves surged and surged. Mo Rushi slightly knitted her eyebrows, and with a light tap of her toes, she leaped tens of meters into the air. The fiery red halo around her body expanded in an instant, and outside her body, a faint shadow of a phoenix appeared. Clang! Immediately, a clear and intense phoenix cry sounded. It seemed to have the power to pierce through the clouds, and the billowing sound waves spread in all directions, surging throughout the entire arena. The hearts of the crowd trembled violently. They stared at the arena with wide eyes, not willing to miss any scene. Mo Rushi stood in the air, like a goddess from the 9th heaven descending to the earth. Her whole body was flowing with a holy red halo, making people have the urge to prostrate themselves and worship her. On her body, there was a huge fiery red giant bird with an endless shadow. The blazing power seemed to be able to burn everything. When people saw this scene, their eyes became blazing, revealing a deep awe. MOU's attack failed. He suddenly raised his head and fiercely stomped on the ground, crushing the bluestone slabs on the arena. His figure rose into the air and stood opposite Mo Rushi. His face was hideous and terrifying, and his eyes were releasing a cold, killing intent. When he noticed the awe in the eyes of the surrounding people looking at Mo Rushi, he felt as if a big stone was pressing down on his heart, making him unable to breathe. This kind of awe, this kind of glory of being the center of attention, should belong to him, MOU, and not Mo Rushi. MOU, let's decide the winner in one move. Mo Rushi felt the cold, killing intent, but she only frowned slightly and spoke in a flat tone. Not to decide the winner, but to decide life and death. Mou's eyes were vicious, and a cold voice rolled out from his throat, one word at a time. Given his domineering nature, how could he let Rushi live after she snatched what belonged to him? As his insolent voice fell, a terrifying giant bird appeared behind Mou. Its entire body was pitch black, and its beak was as sharp as a knife. It was his primordial spirit, the black feather owl. Roar! The blackwing owl raised its head to the sky and let out a shrill cry. Its black feathers emitted waves of evil chi. The evil chi soared into the sky and filled the entire arena. Titan true body! The hearts of the crowd trembled. Mou's origin spirit was a rank 7 origin spirit. Sure enough, it was very terrifying. Just this kind of soaring aura alone made people feel a strong sense of suffocation. What is Mou doing? Is he going all out? Someone's eyes narrowed as he shouted in surprise. Mou released his giant spirit true body. It was obvious that he wanted to fight to the death. No one knew what kind of grievances there was between Rushi and Mou that they would fight with their lives on the line. When Yetion saw this scene, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He said in his heart, Rushi, don't be soft-hearted. If you are soft-hearted, you will lose. Yetion knew Rushi too well. When he made the latter kill someone for the first time, the latter actually cried. Rushi's heart was too kind. Now that he made her harden her heart to kill someone of the same race, Yetion was worried that she wouldn't be able to do it. Titan true body? Rushi saw the blackwing owl behind Mou. Her beautiful eyes flashed, and she said angrily, "Do you really want to fight to the death with me?" At this moment, Rushi still held a glimmer of hope for Mou. What a silly girl. Today, either you die or I die. Mou's throat rolled, and his voice became hoarse. Good. Rushi's eyes trembled. Her heart was filled with determination. Her origin spirit also appeared behind her, and a fiery red phoenix surged out. The 9 heavens divine phoenix, the rank 9 supreme origin spirit appeared. The moment it appeared, the powerful and unparalleled power of the phoenix instantly filled the space of hundreds of meters. Suddenly, a huge force bloomed in the air, and the blazing warmth washed away the previous suffocating feeling. The 9 heavens divine phoenix's eyes were like the sun and the moon. Her crimson eyes stared at the black feather owl, directly suppressing Mou's black feather owl so much that it could not raise its head. What kind of primordial spirit is this? It's so terrifying. Everyone's hearts trembled violently as they felt a surge of warmth in their hearts. Although it was calm, there was an extremely terrifying power hidden within. Mou's primordial spirit, the black feather owl, was a 7th rank primordial spirit, and Rushi's primordial spirit had just appeared, yet it directly suppressed the black feather owl so much that it did not dare to raise its head. How terrifying was her primordial spirit? It was at least an 8th stage origin spirit, and it might even be a 9th stage origin spirit. A rank 9 origin spirit, the legendary supreme origin spirit, was truly too terrifying. At this moment, everyone finally realized that Rushi's ability to trigger phoenix cries to the 9 heavens was not due to luck, but due to talent and strength. Her talent was much higher than Mou's. On the Sky Pavilion, the elders of the 4 great clans were shocked when they saw this scene. At this moment, the 4 of them had completely different thoughts. Xing did not expect Rushi's primordial spirit to be so terrifying. It was definitely not just a 7th rank primordial spirit. Now, he began to regret it. If he had not forced Rushi to stay in the Mo family, then the Mo family might have stood out from the 4 great clans because of her, become the head of the 4 great clans, and even completely control the 4 great clans. But unfortunately, it was too late for regret now. The Mo family had missed a peerless genius, and this peerless genius had already become the enemy of the Mo family. The elders of the other 3 clans also saw this and secretly rejoiced in their hearts. Fortunately, the Mo family did not cultivate Rushi. Otherwise, the Shumi spirit capital might change. in the middle of the martial arts arena. Mou's face was extremely ugly. He could feel the trembling and fear of his primordial spirit. This was an instinctive fear that could not be controlled. In front of the nine heavens' divine phoenix, the black feather owl did not even have the courage to raise its head. The divine phoenix was the supreme of all birds. Even a ferocious bird like the black feather owl had to bow its head. Competing with Rushi's primordial spirit was the biggest mistake Mou had made. Mou, just admit defeat. Rushi's whole body was flowing with seven-colored divine light. Her faint voice echoed in the void, appearing holy and dignified, without a trace of filth. Until this moment, she still chose to give Mou a chance. Mou suddenly raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot, and the anger in his heart had reached a point where it could not be contained. Rushi did not want to kill him, but he did not want to let Rushi go. "I will not admit defeat." A sharp roar sounded. The giant spirit true body behind Mou disappeared. He raised his arm and poured his primordial spirit and the power of the phoenix bloodline into the greedy wolf snake flame spear. Suddenly, a shrill wolf howl sounded in the void. In the next moment, a strange giant black wolf appeared. Its giant body was surging with black flames, and it looked like a long black snake. "I want you to die." Stepping in the air, the wind whistled. Mou gathered all the strength in his body and rushed towards Rushi. Chapter 647. Roar. The giant wolf howled fiercely and roared at the sky. Its violent aura soared into the sky, and an overwhelming power surged out. What a strong momentum! When the crowd saw this scene, their hearts trembled violently. The power of a seventh-grade spiritual weapon was indeed extraordinary. Coupled with Mou's strength of the third tier of the divine wheel, this move would probably kill even a warrior of the fifth tier of the divine wheel on the spot. Rushi only had the strength of the first tier of the divine wheel. Could she withstand this blow? The crowd had doubts in their hearts. Their eyes were fixed on Rushi, not wanting to miss a single moment. Rushi stood proudly in midair, and the nine heavens' divine phoenix's true spirit materialized behind her, fusing as one with the phoenix soul. Phoenix flames surged around her body, making her look like a fire phoenix that was about to be reborn. Rushi stared at Mou. There was no fear in her eyes, but a faint regret. The next moment, she no longer hesitated. The power of the phoenix gushed out from her body, and a phantom of the phoenix whizzed out and descended in midair. At this moment, the space became a sea of fire. The crimson fire of the phoenix and the black fire of the greedy wolf burned together. Boom! Waves of scorching heat rolled out, like boiling lava from a volcano. The crowd was stunned. They could no longer see the figures in the sky. In their eyes, there were only endless flames raging and burning. However, after only a moment, all the flames disappeared, and the figures of Mou and Rushi appeared in front of the crowd again. What's going on? The crowd could not stop their eyes from trembling. In midair, Rushi was unscathed and stood in the air, while Mou was extremely embarrassed. His whole body was dripping with blood, and he was panting heavily. It was with his last bit of willpower that he did not fall. Rushi, the soul of the phoenix, so strong. Mou was no match for her at all. Even with the snake flame spear of the greedy wolf, he was completely vulnerable. "I've lost." Mou looked at Rushi, who was standing gracefully. His eyes were dim, as if he had suddenly lost all his faith. The soul of the ninth heaven phoenix was far more powerful than he had imagined. He could not even withstand one move from the other party. Today, the number one genius of the Mo family, one of the top 3 geniuses of Sumi Lingdu, lost completely. From now on, the title of the number 1 genius of the Mo family no longer belonged to Mou, but to Rushi. When Yetian saw the scene in the sky from afar, he was slightly moved and could not help but feel excited. Others might not understand, but he was very clear. The reason why Mou was defeated, and so thoroughly, was not because his strength was much weaker than Rushi's, but because his various powers were completely restrained by Mo Rushi. Mou and Mo Rushi were both members of the Mo family and had the Phoenix bloodline in their bodies, but Mou's bloodline was obviously much weaker than Mo Rushi's. There was also Mou's primordial spirit, the profound feather owl eagle, which was completely suppressed by Mo Rushi's ninth heaven phoenix. If Mou was not a member of the Mo family, and if his primordial spirit was a weapon spirit or a wood spirit, he would still have a chance of winning. At least, he would not have been defeated so thoroughly. Mo Rushi's beautiful eyes flickered, but her gaze remained calm. There was no expression of joy on her face, and she did not even say a word. She slowly turned around and prepared to leave. Mo Rushi. Just as she turned around, Mou's voice sounded again, slightly hoarse and slightly sad. Kill me. Huh? Mo Rushi's figure was slightly sluggish, but she did not look back. Mou had already admitted defeat, so she would not kill him. She had no intention of killing Mou. This battle was just to prove her talent. Once this goal was achieved, everything was over. I've lost. Just kill me. Mou's voice sounded again. As he spoke, he walked towards Mo Rushi step by step. Soon, the distance between him and Mo Rushi was less than 5 meters. What is Mou doing? The crowd's eyes trembled as they looked at the scene in front of them incredulously. Mou actually took the initiative to ask Mo Rushi to kill him. Was he courting death? It was hard to believe that the number one genius of the Mo family would make such a move. Perhaps he couldn't accept the blow of being defeated. He was so disheartened that he no longer wanted to live. You lost, but I won't kill you. Mo Rushi felt that Mou was behind her. She slightly frowned and said indifferently, You won't kill me? Mou abruptly raised his head, and his originally lifeless eyes released a strange expression at this moment. At this moment, a change suddenly occurred. You won't kill me, but I will kill you. The next moment, Mou suddenly roared and suddenly made a move. The greedy wolf snake flame spear was abruptly raised and stabbed towards Mo Rushi's heart. Everything happened in an instant. Mou's transformation was too fast, so fast that it was astonishing. Die. Mou's eyes were filled with blood, and his face became ferocious, like a mad beast. Time seemed to stand still at this moment. Everyone's eyes widened, and they could not believe the scene in front of them. Puff! Under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes, the greedy wolf snake flame spear fiercely stabbed out. A flaming blade whistled out, and the sound of flesh being cut rang out in the air. On Mo Rushi's chest, a line of fire accompanied by blood gushed out and was directly penetrated. Her pupils suddenly dilated, and there was disbelief and astonishment in her eyes. She never thought that Mou would take the initiative to seek death in order to numb her, let her relax her guard, and then give her a fatal blow when she was at her most relaxed. Her clansmen who were connected by blood, had unexpectedly become the most shameless enemy at this moment. The sudden sneak attack and the sudden scene made the entire martial arts arena fall into a deathly silence. Fresh blood silently splattered, like the last whisper of life, silent and without words. In midair, the peerless figure fell helplessly. Mo Rushi, I will destroy you. At this time, Mou's figure unexpectedly moved again. He raised the greedy wolf snake flame spear with both hands, and his face was as ferocious as a god of death coming out of hell. Endless flames fell, whistling and pressing down on the falling body. Mou did not stop after the sneak attack. He actually wanted to completely destroy Mo Rushi. Bastard! At this critical moment, a thunderous roar resounded in the martial arts arena, like a thunderclap falling from the ninth heaven, shaking everyone's ears and heart. A figure soared into the sky, and a terrifying sword intent bloomed in the air. Nietion's whole body lit up with a layer of dark blue light, turned into a stream of light, and suddenly came out, wrapping Mo Rushi's body. Endless flames fell, but they were all blocked by the extreme water Yuan heavenly armor. Despicable person, you're courting death. The angriest voice sounded. Nietion was in midair, and his whole body spurted out blood. His blood chi surged, his sword chi overflowed, and the sword intent broke out with the most terrifying power in an instant. Nietion's first move was the most terrifying move, the forbidden move of the proud sword art, Weeping Blood Soul. Chapter 648. Taboo Move, Weeping Blood Soul. This was Nietion's most terrifying move. Even the three seals of the god of war and the sword-sealing forbidden array couldn't compare to it. This was because Nietion was enraged. He was truly enraged. When Mou took the initiative to ask for death, he faintly felt that something was wrong. However, he didn't expect that Mou would be shameless to this extent. After admitting defeat in front of so many people, he openly launched a sneak attack. Such a despicable act was simply shameless to the extreme. In midair, the blood-colored sword's shadow pressed down like a mountain. Mou's pupils suddenly widened. The fear in his heart was expressed on his face, making his whole face become distorted. At this moment, he felt the real aura of death. His heart was in extreme despair. At a certain moment, Mou felt a little regret. He suddenly felt that maybe he shouldn't have killed Rushi. Boom! Just at the moment when Mou was in despair and regret, a huge palm shadow suddenly fell from the sky, forcibly shattering the blood-colored sword shadow in the air and saving Mou's dog life. The figure landed and stood beside Mou. It was the Mou family's great elder, Mou Xing. Great elder? Mou felt that his whole body was unharmed. He was still alive. He actually burst into tears. Mou Xing's eyebrows slightly furrowed. His gaze swept towards Nietion as he shouted, "Nietion, how dare you interfere in a sumaru martial competition?" Nietion failed to kill Mou with one strike. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Ignoring Mou Xing's scolding, his figure flashed and steadily caught Rushi in the air. Rushi fell from the air. Suddenly, she felt a warm arm hugging her. She struggled to open her eyes and clearly saw Nietion's face. The corner of her mouth slightly moved, as if she wanted to squeeze out a smile. However, dark red blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. "Nya, heavens, I'm so cold." Using all her strength, Rushi trembled and said this sentence. Rushi. Nietion looked sorrowful. Warm liquid flowed out of his eyes. He could sense that Rushi's life force was slowly fading away, and she was unable to stop it. Fresh blood dyed her body red, as if it was the last cry of her life. Rushi struggled to raise one of her arms, wanting to touch Nietion's face again, but she froze in midair, no longer having the strength to support herself. Nietion held the hand tightly and placed it on his face, but all he felt was a bone-chilling coldness. "Nietion, I regret that I didn't accept your proposal. I haven't become your wife yet." The face in his arms showed its last smile and said with great effort, "Nietion, I regret not accepting your proposal. I haven't become your wife yet." The last word, the last scene, was forever frozen. The light in Rushi's eyes instantly disappeared. Time seemed to come to a standstill. All sounds, all images, all vanished. In front of Nietion was a single face. "Nietion, you still remember me. Are you finally willing to show yourself?" "Nietion, you're shameless. You're taking advantage of me." "Nietion, I'll wait for you. You must come to me. Other people's proposals are all formal. How can they be as casual as you?" The scenes of the past quickly flashed in front of Nietion, making him feel even more heart-wrenching pain. At this moment, Nietion felt like his heart was being cut by a knife. It was as if a piece of his soul had been torn off and could never be pieced back together again. Suddenly, a sorrowful roar resounded. Nietion hugged the girl in his arms tightly and cried out involuntarily, "Rushi, wake up. You haven't become my wife yet. I won't allow you to die." The sorrowful roar was answered by a hollow silence. There was no sound, no reaction. Nietion was the only one left in the whole world, roaring crazily. He held the girl in his arms tightly, and his tears fell uncontrollably. A man doesn't cry easily. only when he's deeply hurt. Thump! Just as Nia Tian hugged Mo Rushi tightly, he suddenly heard a strong heartbeat. At that moment, he thought it was an illusion. Thump! The next moment, another sound was heard, slow but steady. She's not dead, Nia Tian cried out in shock. He carefully used his divine sense to sense Mo Rushi's body, but to his disappointment, he couldn't feel any signs of life. However, there was no mistaking the strong heartbeat. Nia Tian knew that it wasn't an illusion. Mo Rushi was indeed not dead. Corpse Luo. Nia Tian was close to going crazy, and he directly shouted out, "Master, I can feel it too." Corpse Luo, Demon Monarch, answered and directly came out of the chaotic original coffin. He looked at Mo Rushi with a strange expression and carefully felt the faint heartbeat. Everyone who saw this scene was petrified. Nia Tian first lost control and roared, then suddenly calmed down, and a little mouse appeared. This was too strange. Corpse Luo, what's going on? Nia Tian didn't dare to think about it himself. He was afraid that this was a joke, afraid that the hope in his heart would be dashed. Demon King Corpse Luo pondered, trying hard to think. All of a sudden, his expression flickered. He looked at Mo Rushi with an exaggerated expression and sent a voice transmission to Nia Tian. "Master, have you heard of a legend about the ancient divine phoenix? Just say it." Nia Tian was not in the mood to guess riddles, and he said coldly. Corpse Luo, Demon Monarch, suddenly became nervous, and his body trembled slightly. He said word by word, "Nirvana of the phoenix, rebirth from the ashes. You mean Rushi is not dead and will come back to life, right?" Nia Tian was stunned, and his voice trembled. He had indeed heard of the legend of Nirvana rebirth. The phoenix, like the divine dragon, was an ancient divine beast, also known as the phoenix of immortality. According to the legend, the phoenix had the power of Nirvana rebirth in its body. Every time the phoenix's life was exhausted, it would self-immolate, turn into ashes, and then be reborn from the ashes. This cycle continued, and it would never die. Nia Tian had never believed such a legend, but now he had to believe it. Mo Rushi had the soul of the phoenix in her body and inherited the power of Nirvana rebirth. It was this power that kept her alive. If she's not dead, why isn't she waking up? Nia Tian forced himself to calm down and asked nervously. Corpse Luo, Demon Monarch, shook his head and said, "I don't know either. Perhaps some conditions are required for the power of Nirvana to work. But I can confirm that Miss Rushi is indeed not dead." Nia Tian nodded, and his eyes regained some spirit. He carried Mo Rushi and prepared to leave. Just as Nia Tian turned around, an unfriendly voice sounded again. Chapter 649. Nia Tian's face darkened. He suddenly turned around, and his ice-cold gaze fell on Mo Xing. A cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. Mo Xing felt the killing intent in his eyes. His heart trembled violently, and his body could not help but sway. The killing intent emanating from Nia Tian made him feel like a rabbit that was being targeted by a wolf. "You are Mo Xing, the great elder of the Mo clan, right?" Nia Tian said indifferently. "Since you know my identity, does an elder Nia Tian want to say something about what you did just now?" Mo Xing said coldly. "What do you want me to say?" Nia Tian's mouth twitched. A ball of anger was boiling in his heart. "You openly intervened in the Shumi martial tournament. You have already broken the rules of the Shumi martial meet. Don't tell me you want to leave?" Mo Xing angrily rebuked with a righteous look. His appearance simply made Nia Tian want to vomit. Are all the people of the Mo clan so shameless? Nia Tian said coldly. Mo has already admitted defeat. That is to say, the match between him and Mo Rushi has already ended. Even if I intervened, it has nothing to do with the Shumi martial meet. As for breaking the rules of the illusory Shumi martial meet, don't you think it's absurd to forcibly put such a crime on my head? The one who really broke the rules of the illusory martial meet is not me, but Mo. He clearly admitted defeat, but still shamelessly launched a sneak attack. This kind of behavior is provoking the Shumi martial meet. If everyone is like him, admitting defeat before launching a sneak attack, then the Shumi martial meet might as well be changed to a sneak attack martial meet. Nietion's voice was flat, but every sentence and every word clearly resounded in everyone's ears. Mou was really too shameless. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he openly launched a sneak attack. After today, the former one of the three monstrous geniuses of the Shumi spiritual capital would inevitably become the laughing stock of the 3,000 small worlds. As for Mo Xing, he was even worse than Mou. It was clearly Mou who launched a sneak attack first, provoking the rules of the Meru martial meeting. Nietion was forced to take action, but he instead asked Nietion to give him an explanation. This kind of behavior was really shameless. It was very obvious that Mo Xing was using the Mo clan as the organizer of the Meru martial meet to pressure Nietion. When the surrounding crowd heard Nietion's words, they all started discussing at once. It was obviously Mou who was at fault first, but he insisted on blaming Lord Nietion's head. The Mo family's behavior is really shameless and has no lower limit. That's right. 4 great clans? Isn't this bullying? Fortunately, Lord Nietion is a red-robed elder. Otherwise, I'm afraid he would have been killed by Mo Xing long ago. The 4 great aristocratic families organizing the summer martial meet, but taking the lead in launching sneak attacks. What's the point of this martial meet? It's fine if we don't watch. The crowd was in an uproar. Everyone was biased towards Nietion. Mo Xing's complexion turned ugly, becoming the color of a pig's liver. Even if he was a member of the 4 great clans, if everyone present supported Nietion, this matter would be very difficult to handle. You're talking nonsense. Mo Xing gritted his teeth and bellowed. Mou and Mo Rushi have yet to leave the martial field, so the competition between them has not ended. I don't care what methods Mou used during the competition, but you openly interfered in the competition, which is breaking the rules of the martial meeting. The anger in Nietion's heart soared. He could no longer tolerate it, and said furiously, "Old pig, I broke the rules of the martial meeting. What can you do to me? If the people of the 4 great clans only know how to protect their own disciples, then this Meru martial meeting is not worth holding. Nietion, you're courting death." Mo Xing was insulted by Nietion in public. His old face flushed red, and his body trembled. He roared crazily, as if he was going to kill Nietion. The Mo clan is unfair. The Meru martial meeting is unfair. At this moment, a thunderous voice suddenly sounded. Even in the noisy martial field, it was still loud and ear-piercing. The Mo clan is unfair. The Meru martial meeting is unfair. Following which, the crowd on the martial field's viewing platform was boiling with emotions. They shouted in unison, like a tsunami, one after another. Who dares to cause trouble? Mo Xing was extremely angry. He roared, and suddenly, dozens of figures appeared in midair. Every one of them had a strong and imposing aura, and they were all warriors of the spirit wheel realm. These were the warriors of the 4 great clans, who maintained the order of the martial meeting. These warriors usually did not appear, but once there was chaos in the martial meeting, they would take action. At this moment, as long as Mo Xing gave the order, these people would kill anyone present, including Nietion. Following the appearance of these dozens of figures, everyone felt a terrifying pressure. The entire martial field immediately fell into a dead silence, and no one dared to make a sound. This is Su-Mi Spirit City. The 4 great clans have the final say. Mo Xing's gaze was like an eagle, sweeping across the entire field, and he shouted coldly, "Whoever is dissatisfied with the Meru martial meeting, stand out now." As the cold voice fell, the entire field was dead silent. Mo Xing was truly enraged. At this moment, if anyone dared to stand out, wouldn't that be courting death? However, at this moment, there were still people who were not afraid of death. Me. Just as Mo Xing's voice fell, a voice was heard, resounding in the dead silence, and it was even more ear-piercing. The crowd looked towards the source of the voice, and when they saw the person's face, their hearts trembled. It was the elder of the Alchemist Association, Gu Yi. Nietian was a member of the Alchemist Association, and now that he was being pressured by Mo Xing, it was not surprising that Gu Yi would stand out and speak for him. Me. In the next moment, another voice sounded, and immediately, a terrifying blade intent soared into the sky. The figure in the air was like a tyrannical blade, releasing an arrogant aura, not the slightest bit afraid of the warriors of the four great clans. Oh my God, he is the world-defying wild blade. The crowd saw the figure in the air clearly, and someone couldn't help but exclaim, "Me too." Immediately after, another figure appeared. That person released his aura, and he was actually a spirit wheel realm warrior, standing side by side with Elder Yi. The crowd's eyes trembled and gradually became blazing. Someone recognized Duanmu Bai and screamed, "He is the palace master of Qinquan Palace, Duanmu Bai." I am not convinced either. Just as Duanmu Bai stood still, another figure appeared. His aura was strong, and it was actually comparable to that of Elder Yi. This person was a middle-aged warrior, and he was tall and sturdy. His aura was released, and it seemed as though a golden giant shadow had appeared around him. Battle Cloud Tyrant Body. He is the sect master of Battle Cloud Sect, Lord Zhan Hong Hai. As the figure landed, more exclamations sounded. The crowd became restless at this moment, and their eyes revealed a manic passion. The red-robed elder of the Alchemist Association, the world-defying Wildblade, the South Mountain Region Qinquan Palace Master, the North Sea Region Battle Cloud Sect Master. All these people stood out to support Nietian at this moment. Such a scene was extremely rare. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Nietian, a teenager, was actually able to gather so many big shots together to fight against the four great clans. This made people surprised, and they wondered what kind of person he was. The crowd was furious, and the voices were boiling. In the next moment, countless figures stood up one after another, and the sky-shaking cheers sounded again. Chapter 650. In the Sumi Arena. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. The situation was reversed in an instant. There were more and more people behind Nietian, and there were many Spirit Wheel Realm warriors. As long as Mo Xing and the others dared to make a move, a riot against the four big families would completely break out. Mo Xing looked at the scene in front of him with his eyes wide open. His expression was stiff for a long time. He didn't expect that there would still be people who dared to stand out after a strong performance. The most important thing was that the people who stood out were all big shots in the 3,000 small worlds. They were not ordinary people. Gu Yi, Yilin Yun, Zhan Hong Hai, Duanmu Bai. The combined forces of these people were definitely not weaker than the Mo family. Mo Xing panicked. His eyes flashed with unconcealable panic. The situation in front of him, if not handled carefully, would lead to very serious consequences. Everyone, don't be impulsive. Nietian hugged Mo Rushi tightly. He felt the latter's steady heartbeat and calmed down a lot. He waved his hand slightly, indicating for everyone to calm down. As soon as Nietian's voice fell, the noisy arena immediately quieted down. Everyone's eyes focused on Nietian, waiting for him to speak. Nietian's eyes were calm. He suddenly raised his head to look at the other three people on the near heaven pavilion and shouted, "Don't the three of you want to say something?" With such a big thing happening and the situation developing like this, it was obviously impossible for the other three families to pretend to be mute. Elder Mo Xiaotian of the Tang family stepped out and was the first to arrive. His gaze swept across Nietian and then stopped on Tang 13, who was behind Nietian, for a moment. He then paused and said, "I didn't pay much attention to the match between MOU and Mo Rushi, but I heard MOU admit defeat. According to the rules of the Sumi martial meet, once one side admits defeat, the match will be considered over. So when MOU admitted defeat, the battle between him and Mo Rushi was already over. As for why he took the initiative to seek death and launched a sneak attack, it has nothing to do with the competition. It's purely a personal grudge between him and Mo Rushi." At this point, Mo Xiaotian turned to look at the dozens of black-clothed martial artists in the air and continued. Elder Niet Tian intervened in the personal grievances between MOU and Mo Rushi. It has nothing to do with the Meru martial meat. All that you can leave now. The dozens of black-clothed cultivators were stunned at first. Then they immediately disappeared. Mo Xiaoyan's words clearly indicated that he had already discussed it with the other two. If not for so many people standing out, the other three aristocratic families could have stood on the side of the Mo clan. But now that the situation had developed to such a state, the other three families would not take the blame together with the Mo clan. When Mo Xing heard Mo Xiaoyan's words, his complexion turned even more unsightly. It was as if he had swallowed a mouthful of donkey hair. The more he spat it out, the more stifled he felt. Nie Tian glanced at Mo Xiaoyan and smiled faintly. The elders of the three great clans were all wily old foxes. With Mo Xiaoyan's words, he had completely separated the matter from the Meru martial meat. He directly said that it was a personal grievance between MOU and Mo Rushi. This not only admitted that Nie Tian did not break the rules of the Meru martial meat, but also said that MOU's actions had nothing to do with the Meru martial meat. After he admitted defeat, the duel was over. What happened next was MOU's own business. These words were very slick. They narrowed the conflict to the one between Nie Tian and the Mo clan. The other three aristocratic families and the Meru martial meat would not participate at all. Mo Xing, do you still want to stop me? Nie Tian's cold eyes swept over Mo Xing as he said indifferently. Without the support of the other three families, Nie Tian was not afraid of Mo Xing at all. Mo Xing had the Mo clan behind him, and Nie Tian also had the alchemist guild behind him. There was also the Qinquan Palace and the Battle Cloud sect. These forces added together were definitely stronger than a single Mo clan. Moreover, Nie Tian could already see that Mo Xing's strength was only at the 8th tier of the Divine Wheel, which was comparable to Yumi Xian, one of the Ling Xian Tian Pavilion's Yuming elders. Since Nie Tian could kill Yumi Xian, he could also kill Mo Xing. Although Mo Xing had withstood the blood-weeping soul slash just now. However, Nie Tian understood that he was too anxious previously. The true power of the blood-weeping soul slash had not been released. If he made another move at this time, Mo Xing might not be able to withstand it. Mo Xing stood in the same place with a stiff expression. His mind was thinking very quickly. He was the great elder of the Mo clan, while Nie Tian was a red-clothed elder. The other three families had already disassociated themselves from this matter. If the Mo clan and the Alchemists Guild openly fell out, they would definitely not get any benefits. Now, the people behind Nie Tian were all extremely angry. If they really fought, these people would definitely not stand idly by. At this time, Mo Xing was not afraid of Nie Tian. What he was really afraid of was Yi Linyun, Zhan Honghai, and the others. However, he did not know that Nie Tian's strength was already not below Yi Linyun's. Nie Tian was the person he should be afraid of. Let's go. Mo Xing was stunned for a long time. In the end, he still compromised. He squeezed out a few words from the gaps of his teeth and left with MOU. Mo Xing. Just as he turned around, Nie Tian's figure suddenly sounded. Mo Xing's figure paused, but he did not turn around. Please pass a message to Mo Zhaojing. If anything happens to Mo Rushi, I will bury the entire Mo clan with her. Nie Tian's cold voice sounded. His tone was so calm that it made people's hearts palpitate. Arrogant. So arrogant that it made people's hair stand on end. To say such words at the Meru martial meet. Only Nie Tian would be able to do so. Every sentence, every word, was like a sharp blade that pierced Mo Xing's heart. For Nie Tian to say such words in front of everyone, it was obvious that he did not put the Mo clan in his eyes. After today, the Mo clan's reputation and status would be greatly reduced. Mo Xing's eyes emitted a vicious divine light. His chest heaved up and down, and his breathing became hurried. His face was a wretched green, devoid of blood. He did not understand that he, the first elder of the Mo clan, would actually be forced into such a state by youth. It was truly sullen. Now scram. Before Mo Xing could react, Nie Tian spoke again with extreme mockery and disdain. Mo Xing's body swayed as if he had been slapped in the face. This enraged him to the extreme. His body trembled, but he did not dare to make a move in the end. He left angrily. Seeing Mo Xing and Mo Yu leave, Nie Tian did not dare to delay any longer. He immediately carried Mo Rushi and left. His words earlier were definitely not just a threat. If Mo Rushi really died, he would bury the entire Mo clan with her. After returning to the Gu residence, Nie Tian brought Mo Rushi into a room. At this point, he no longer had any scruples. He quickly stripped Mo Rushi of her clothes. However, the scene that entered his eyes flabbergasted him. The wound on Mo Rushi's chest had already stopped bleeding. However, it had turned slightly black as if a tiny black flame was burning. That wound was actually healing slowly. How can this be? Nie Tian was dumbfounded as he hurriedly helped Mo Rushi put on her clothes. Chapter 651. Corpse Demon Lord appeared and shook his head helplessly as he looked at the strange wound on Mo Rushi's chest. Although he was a demon with a lifespan of more than 1,000 years and had seen much more than Nie Tian, he definitely didn't know everything. The ancient divine phoenix was a divine beast that existed hundreds of thousands of years ago. Even Corpse Demon Lord didn't know much about it. After thinking for a while, Corpse Demon Lord guessed, "Master, I think the wound on Mistress's body is healing. This has something to do with the phoenix soul in her body. The healing of the wound means that the power of the phoenix soul is still there. As long as the phoenix soul's undying nirvana power can be stimulated, Mistress can be resurrected." Nie Tian nodded. Mo Rushi's body was cold at this moment. Other than her heart that was still beating, there were no other signs of life. In this state, Nie Tian didn't know how long the phoenix soul could exist. If the phoenix soul was gone, Mo Rushi would be in danger. As for activating the nirvana power, Nie Tian didn't know how to do it. The phoenix was an ancient divine beast. How could Nie Tian know how to activate the nirvana power? Ancient divine beast. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. He suddenly recalled that there was indeed a person from the ancient era beside him. His sworn brother, the golden dragon, Di Shi. I'll go back to Heaven Luo City now and ask Di Shi. He must know how to activate the nirvana power of the phoenix soul. Nie Tian immediately became excited and couldn't wait to see Di Shi. Master! Just as Nie Tian was overwhelmed with excitement, the corpse demon monarch's voice rang out. Heaven Luo City is several thousand miles away from the Sumeru spirit capital. Even if you ride on a flying spirit beast, it will take you several days. Mistress's current physical condition isn't very good. She may not be able to bear the pain of traveling. Moreover, Lord D, she may not know how to activate the nirvana power. If we go back in a hurry, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Hearing Corpse Demon Lord's words, Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He thought for a while and asked, "What do you think I should do?" Wait. Corpse Luo Demon Monarch paused for a moment, then spat out a word. If we want to return to Tian Luo City, we have to wait for Mistress' wounds to heal first. Perhaps, when her wounds heal, she will naturally wake up. Nie Tian frowned, thought for a moment, and finally nodded. He walked to the bedside and looked at the beautiful face in front of him. There were too many words in his heart, but he couldn't say them. At this moment, Nie Tian finally knew that the girl in front of him occupied such an important position in his heart. The moment he sensed Mo Rushi's death, the pain of his soul being torn apart was something he would remember for the rest of his life. That moment was even more unforgettable than Luo Xian's betrayal. "Rushi, wake up. I will never let you get hurt again." She could only mutter to herself. The person she loved the most was right in front of her, but she couldn't open her mouth to speak to herself. If one didn't experience this pain personally, one wouldn't be able to understand it. After that, Nie Tian stayed by Mo Rushi's side. During this period, Mo Tai came by many times. Seeing Nie Tian's focused expression, staring at Mo Rushi without blinking, he could only sigh. The next day, Gu Yi, Yi Linyun, and the others gathered outside the room. Ever since Nie Tian entered Mo Rushi's room, he hadn't come out. Everyone was very worried. Creak! At this moment, the door of the room opened, and a familiar face appeared. Nietian walked out with a solemn expression. Seeing Nietian walk out, everyone's eyes trembled violently, and their faces stiffened. They looked at Nietian in disbelief and were speechless. "What's wrong?" Nietian forced himself to speak. He knew that his complexion wasn't good, but it wasn't to the extent that everyone was so shocked, as if they didn't recognize him at all. "Brother Nya, your hair." He was the first to open his mouth, but he couldn't finish the rest of his sentence. Nietian looked at everyone's expression and was slightly stunned. He reached out to pull a strand of hair, and when he looked closely, it was actually silver white. In one night, his hair had all turned white. Nietian's hair turned white in one night, and he was very emotional. After a long time, everyone calmed down. Nietian shook his head slightly and said solemnly, "I'm preparing to make a trip back to Heaven Luo City." Return to Heaven Luo City? Everyone's eyes narrowed, and their faces were filled with confusion. This was the time for the Sumeru martial meet. If Nietian returned to Heaven Luo City, could it be that he wasn't going to participate in the meet? Nietian didn't explain anything to everyone, and only warned Duanmu Lu and the others not to force it, and to fight if they could. He also specially instructed that if they met Long Air, Ji Tinghai, Mou, and Yu Tianjin, they must immediately admit defeat. After giving these instructions, Nietian didn't delay any longer, and immediately headed to Heaven Luo City. The Sumer martial meet was not important to Nietian at all. If something happened to Mo Rushi, even if he obtained the champion of the martial meet, it would be meaningless. This time, he only went alone, and did not bring Mo Rushi, nor did he let anyone accompany him. The wounds on Mo Rushi's body had already healed, but she did not wake up. Nietian didn't want to wait any longer, and decided to immediately return to Heaven Luo City. Shi was his last hope. As long as he knew how to stimulate the nirvana power, no matter the price, Nietian must do it. A pair of proud sword wings appeared behind Nietian's back, and his figure soared into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon. At the same time that Nietian headed to Heaven Luo City, Mo family conference hall. Mo Zhaojing sat upright in the hall, his whole body emitting a vigorous aura, his eyes stern. Although he didn't say a word, anyone could feel that he was already extremely furious. Nietian, damn it! Suddenly, Mo Zhaojing stood up, and his trembling and angry voice echoed in the hall. When he first heard about what happened at the Sumer martial meet, Mo Zhaojing almost thought that he had misheard. Mo was defeated by Mo Rushi. Mo sneak attacked Mo Rushi, and Nietian forcefully interfered, and many big powers stood up to oppose. After this series of events, the Mo family's reputation and prestige plummeted. Furthermore, Nietian even let Mo Xing say that if Mo Rushi made a move, he would let the entire Mo family be buried with her. Tang Hao and Meng Fanshun didn't dare to say such words. Nietian was just the governor of a small city. Even if he was a red-clothed elder, how could he challenge the entire Mo family with the strength of one person? This was no different from courting death. Mo Xing, how do you think Mo Rushi's injuries are? Can she still survive? Mo Zhaojing's aura calmed down, and he spoke coldly, his eyes flashing with a hint of fierceness. Mo Xing gulped and said, "Family head, Mo Rushi's chest was pierced by Mou, and even if Nietian had a level 9 spiritual pill, he wouldn't be able to save her. And at that time, I had already sensed that Mo Rushi was no longer breathing, and she was already dead. But, no buts." Not waiting for Mo Xing to finish, Mo Zhaojing coldly interrupted and scolded, "Mo Rushi is only an abandoned child of the Mo family. If she's dead, then so be it. There's no pity." Chapter 652. Mo Xing looked at Mo Zhaojing's cold face. He paused for a while and said, "Master, Nietian regards Mo Rushi as his beloved. If she really dies, I'm afraid Nietian won't let it go easily." Mo Zhaojing's face darkened. He said cold, "Our Mo family is one of the 4 big families. Why would we be afraid of the threat of kid? Mo Xing's face twitched and sweat appeared on his forehead. At this time, Mo Feng, the outer sect elder, suddenly walked over and said, Clan Master, Grand Elder, Nietian's potential is limitless. We have to be careful. 2 years ago, when young Master Mo Yu and I first came to Moyang City, Nietian was only at the origin spirit realm. He was not worth mentioning at all. But now, in less than 2 years, he has already reached the spirit wheel realm. I'm afraid you won't be able to find a second person with such talent in the 3,000 small worlds. If we let him continue to grow, I'm afraid he will become a big problem. Mo Feng had a sinister look on his face. He regretted killing Nietian back in Moyang City. Today's incident wouldn't have happened, but it was too late to say anything now. Nietian was already very powerful, and his status was different from before. It would be very difficult to kill him. There was another reason why Mo Feng wanted Nietian to die as soon as possible, and that was because Nietian knew who he was. Once his identity was exposed, the Mo family wouldn't tolerate him. Therefore, it was better to get rid of Nietian as soon as possible. Mo Feng is right. Nietian's strength is very strange, and he has so many forces supporting him. If we don't get rid of him soon, he will become a big problem. Mo Xing also chimed in. He had fought against Nietian before, so he was well aware of Nietian's unfathomable strength. Mo Xing, do you think Mo Yu and Nietian have a chance? Mo Zhaojing's face was gloomy, and he said in a deep voice, This. Mo Xing narrowed his eyes and found it hard to speak. Just say it. Mo Zhaojing's eyes flashed with killing intent. Yes. Mo Xing nodded and said, During the martial arts gathering, when Nietian attacked Mo Yu, I took a blow from him. The power of that blow was very strange. If I hadn't been prepared and tried my best, I wouldn't have been able to take it. Nietian is now at the 3rd tier of the spirit wheel, but according to my observation, his real strength is definitely above the 7th tier. Even the current me would have to expend some effort to kill him. This kid is so terrifying. Mo Zhaojing's gaze froze, and his face was filled with surprise. Nietian's strength had indeed risen too quickly, far exceeding Mo Zhaojing's expectations. On the other hand, Mo Tian's strength was too strong. Mo Xing was at the 8th tier of the Divine Wheel and was 1 step away from reaching the pinnacle of the Divine Wheel. Mo Xing said, Mo, Long Xing Mo, and Mo Xing, Mo Tan. In the spirit wheel realm, every tier is thousands of miles apart. Nietian was able to challenge a warrior at the 8th tier of the spirit wheel when he was at the 3rd tier. His talent was unparalleled. If Nietian reached the peak of the spirit wheel realm, Mo Zhaojing was worried that he wouldn't be a match for him. However, Mo Zhaojing didn't know that Mo Xing's estimation of Nietian's strength was wrong. Nietian's strength was more than that. Currently, Nietian was only afraid of warriors at the 9th tier of the spirit wheel. He wasn't afraid of anyone else. If Mo Xing and Nietian were to fight, it would be hard to say who would win. Mo Zhaojing pondered. After a long time, a cold light flashed across his face. His eyes suddenly fixed on Mo Xing, and his lips curled into a strange smile. Master you. Mo Xing's scalp went numb from Mo Zhaojing's stare. His forehead was drenched in sweat, and his tongue started to spin. Mo Zhaojing's face was cold, and his lips curled into a smile. He said abruptly, Elder Mo, Nietian is already the biggest enemy of the Mo family. I can't watch him grow, but I can't do it myself. So, Master, I can kill him. Mo Xing said quickly before Mo Zhaojing could finish. He had an ominous feeling in his heart that was getting stronger and stronger. Mo Zhaojing shook his head slightly and smiled. Elder Mo, you can't kill Nietian. He can only be killed by Mo Yu. After so many years, I let you be the great elder of the Mo family. Now, it's time for you to repay the family. Family head, you want me to give Mo Yu? Mo Xing suddenly thought of something. His eyes opened wide, and his face turned as pale as a piece of paper. Empowerment! Mo Feng also thought of something and shouted. Yes! Mo Zhaojing raised his voice. He suddenly took a step forward and placed his hand on Mo Xing's shoulder. He said with a faint smile, "Elder Mo Xing, don't worry. You have made the greatest contribution to the Mo family by helping MOU. I promise that your family will stay in Su Mi spiritual capital forever." How about it? Empowerment, the Mo family's secret skill. It was a skill that allowed a strong cultivator to forcefully impart his power to a weak cultivator. Only the people of the Mo family could use this skill. Every warrior had different elemental energy and blood chi. If they absorbed another warrior's elemental energy or blood chi, it would cause the elemental energy and blood chi in their body to become chaotic. If it was light, they would go mad. If it was heavy, they would explode and die. However, the people of the Mo family were different. They all had the bloodline of the phoenix, which ensured that their elemental energy and blood chi were similar. Even so, empowerment came with a heavy price. If Mo Xing used up all his elemental energy and blood chi, he would definitely die. As for MOU, his foundation would be damaged, and he would not be able to improve his cultivation. However, with Mo Xing's cultivation, MOU's strength would directly increase to the 9th tier of the divine wheel. In the 3,000 small worlds, he would be a peak figure. Therefore, even if his strength could not increase in the future, it did not matter. Mo Xing was stunned. He felt Mo Zhaojing's hand on his shoulder tighten slightly. His heart sank. He knew that he had to agree to this, whether he wanted to or not. If he agreed, Mo Zhaojing might keep his family for the sake of his contribution to the Mo family. If he did not agree, not only would he die, but everyone in his family would also suffer. Mo Zhaojing was cruel and merciless. Killing his family was nothing to him. At this moment, Mo Xing was regretting his decision. If he knew that Mo Zhaojing would do this, he would not have saved MOU from Yetian. It was truly a case of one's own doing, getting caught in one's own trap. Mo Feng watched from the side in horror. He was glad that his strength was low. Otherwise, he might have been forced by Mo Zhaojing to give empowerment to MOU. Mo Zhaojing was really cruel. He could even kill Mo Xing, who had worked with him for many years. Master, I agree. Mo Xing's heart was like dead ashes. His expression was extremely painful as he nodded powerlessly. It's good that you agree. Mo Zhaojing smiled faintly. He patted Mo Xing's shoulder and said, "Elder Mo Xing, my training of you was not in vain. At a critical moment, you can sacrifice for the family." Mo Xing gritted his teeth and nodded. His face was full of pain. He said, "I hope Master will keep your promise. After I die, let my family stay in Sumi Spiritual City forever." Of course. Mo Zhaojing smiled strangely, his face indifferent. Mo Zhaojing had thought about letting Mo Xing help MOU. As long as MOU's strength reached the 9th tier of the divine wheel, not only would he be able to kill Nietian openly, but he would also be able to become the champion of the Sumi martial meet. In this way, MOU's reputation could be reversed. In the future, he would be able to rightfully inherit the position of master. Chapter 653. 3 days later, in Tianluo City. The sky was vast and cloudless. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared. Behind him, a pair of wings formed by sword shadows flapped rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in the sky above Tianluo City. This figure was none other than Yetian. During these 3 days, he didn't stop for even a moment. He rushed from Sumi Ling City to Tianluo City just to see the golden dragon Di Shi. Nietian's figure was like the wind. He directly crossed Tianluo City and arrived in the sky above Tianluo Mountain. His figure stood in the sky, his eyes sharp like a long sword, releasing a terrifying sword essence. At this moment, Nietian's face was a little pale, and his breathing was a little rapid. After running for 3 days and 3 nights, even though he was a warrior in the spirit world realm, he also felt that his origin energy was running out. If it wasn't for the support of the 30 billion stars in his body, it would be impossible for him to reach Tianluo City in 3 days. Good brother, you're back. Almost as soon as Nietian stabilized his body, A rolling voice came from the ground, shaking heaven and earth. Immediately, a dragon's soul soared into the sky. The huge body of the dragon soul rolled up as if it was going to break through the sky. Majestic dragon energy was immediately released. A huge golden dragon head, dazzling golden scales, dragon eyes that were like the sun and moon, and a body that was more than 3,000 meters long. The huge creature that appeared in front of him was the ancient dragon soul, Di Shi. With the appearance of Di Shi, heaven and earth trembled, and a terrifying and mighty pressure was released. The mountains and rivers changed color, and the sun and moon lost their light. My good brother, you're finally back. The body of the dragon soul, Di Shi, rolled, squeezing the dark clouds and the void, and even the space was pulled tight. The appearance of Nietian made him very excited. He actually rolled up in the sky, almost dancing with joy. At this moment, the whole Tian Luo city was boiling. The legendary ancient dragon soul appeared again. Everyone looked up, and many even knelt down as if they were on a pilgrimage. Big brother Di Shi. Nietian looked at the huge creature in front of him and felt an inexplicable sense of peace in his heart. Di Shi was Nietian's only hope. If even Di Shi didn't know how to stimulate the power of nirvana, then Nietian really wouldn't know what to do. Brother, your appearance has changed. Di Shi wasn't surprised to see Nietian's hair turning silver. Instead, he was a bit curious as he said, I've heard that when humans grow old, their hair will turn white, just like us dragons. When we're old and weak, our scales will fall off. Di Shi's voice was mighty and reverberated in the air. He suddenly thought of something, and the dragon head froze for a moment before he said in astonishment, Brother, could it be that your time has come? Nietian was slightly speechless. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Big brother Di Shi, let's talk about my hair later. This time, I came back because I have something to ask you. Brother, ask away. Your big brother is the smartest dragon in the Golden Dragon clan. There is nothing in the world that I don't know. Di Shi's expression was confident, and his voice was loud. Nietian nodded, hoping that Di Shi really knew everything. Next, Nietian told him about Emo Rushi, and finally said, Big brother Di Shi, Rushi is my wife. I can't lose her. After hearing this, Di Shi's expression was sorrowful, and he didn't speak for a long time. Roar. After a while, Di Shi suddenly roared towards the sky. An intense dragon roar resounded, and a mighty force spread hundreds of miles away. The surrounding cities trembled under the roar. Sumi Ling City, how dare you bully my brother's woman? When I, Di Shi, reconstruct my dragon body, I will definitely flatten Sumi Ling City. A powerful voice resounded, and Di Shi's huge dragon body shook. The terrifying dragon Shi was boundlessly domineering. Di Shi was incomparably furious, but Nietian was somewhat speechless. He had said so much, but Di Shi still didn't grasp the main point. He didn't want Di Shi to avenge Emo Rushi, but he wanted to know how to stimulate the power of nirvana. Nietian took a step forward and said, Big brother Di Shi, let's talk about Rushi's revenge later. I want to know how to stimulate the power of nirvana and wake Rushi up. Di Shi was stunned for a moment, then began to ponder. After a while, he said, The Phoenix clan indeed lived in the same era as our Divine Dragon clan. I once heard from His Majesty, the Dragon Emperor, that the Phoenix clan indeed has the nirvana power of immortality and rebirth. However, the nirvana altar is a secret of the Phoenix clan, and other clans don't know about it. Even His Majesty the Dragon Emperor has never seen the real nirvana altar. Nirvana altar? Nietian was slightly stunned and asked, What is that? Di Shi's dragon beard froze in the air for a moment, and his huge dragon head put on a conflicted expression and said, The nirvana altar is the holy land of the Phoenix clan. His Majesty the Dragon Emperor said that all phoenixes, if they want to be reborn, must endure the power of the Sacred Heart in the nirvana altar, and then be reborn in the altar. The power of the Sacred Heart. Hearing this name, Nietian was stunned for a moment, and his body suddenly shook, as if he was electrocuted. The power of the Sacred Heart. This made Nietian think of a name, the Nirvana, Sacred Heart. The Nirvana Sacred Heart was the 8th demon fire on the demon fire list, also known as the Flame of Life. This fire was different from other demon fires. It did not have a strong destructive power, but it had a strong life force, and it was said that it had the power to regenerate flesh and bones. At first, Nietion thought that the description of the Nirvana Sacred Heart on the demon fire list might be wrong. How could there be a demon fire without destructive power, but it had a life force? But later, he read a lot of ancient books about the demon fire, and finally confirmed that the Nirvana Sacred Heart indeed had a strong life force, but it was a bit far-fetched to say that it could regenerate flesh and bones. At this time, Nietion had a bold guess in his heart. The Nirvana altar of the ancient Phoenix clan relied on the Nirvana Sacred Heart to have the power of rebirth. Perhaps the so-called Nirvana altar was not an altar, but a Nirvana Sacred Heart. But the Nirvana Sacred Heart had never appeared, and even if Nietion was sure that the Nirvana Sacred Heart could stimulate the power of Nirvana, where could he find it? Most importantly, Nietion did not know how long the Phoenix soul in Mo Rushi's body could last. If the Phoenix soul disappeared, Mo Rushi would really die. Big Brother D Shi, how long do you think the Phoenix soul can exist in Mo Rushi's body? Nietion was not sure, and suddenly asked. D Shi was stunned for a moment, and said in a low voice, when the Phoenix clan was at its peak, it could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Dragon clan. The Phoenix soul is very strong, and it can exist for at least hundreds of thousands of years. Hearing D Shi's answer, Nietion's heart slightly calmed down. He did not need hundreds of thousands of years. As long as he was strong enough, he would definitely find the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Master! At this time, the corpse demon monarch's voice suddenly sounded, with an unconcealable excitement. What is it? Nietion's eyes slightly narrowed. I think I know where the Nirvana Sacred Heart is. The corpse demon monarch murmured, his eyes flashing with extreme excitement. You know where the Nirvana Sacred Heart is? Nietion was shocked, and his heart jumped to his throat.